Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday evening, June 1st, 2026. This is the Gorham Planning Board regular meeting. Would you please join me in pledging allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mrs. Einman. Would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Benson.
Here.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mr. Delaney.
Here.
Mr. Chris Foley.
Here.
Ms. Nichols.
Here.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in your packet, you should have approval, or potential approval, of minutes of the meeting from May 4th, 2026, Planning Board meeting, and May 18th, Planning Board meeting. Usually we take these separately. I'm looking at the May 4th minutes. Does anyone have any? I should go to our secretary. I apologize.
Yes, Chair. I've gone through the minutes of the May 4th meeting, and I have multiple small edits. Most are not material, but I would like to request that I give this list of these small edits to staff, and that we approve the minutes at our next meeting, if that's okay with everybody. Just for the May 4th.
Sure. I have one correction. I'm not sure if you picked this up. Okay. Attorney Joe Savitsky, I believe we should say he's the board counsel, but for this project, because he's not our regular counsel, and so there's no confusion what happened to. But please, Ms. Nichols, take her notes, and we'll look forward to seeing them in the near future.
Yes, at the July meeting, I'll have them.
Is that everyone okay with that? Verbally, nod the head. Okay, thank you. So we will look forward to seeing revised minutes from May 4th. Moving along, if you would, please, May 18th.
Mr. Chair, the May 18th Planning Board minutes I reviewed, and I did not find any errors in there or anything that I am recommending for adjustment. I'm just double checking. So I'm good with that, and I would recommend that for approval.
Thank you. I also did not see any errors or omissions or anything. Is there a motion, please?
I will make a motion that we approve the Planning Board meeting minutes of May 18th, 2026.
Ms. Nichols, is there a second, please?
Second, Dave Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Mr. Christopher was absent. Thank you. Moving along, reports, chair report. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a brief review of blueprint reading prior to this. We spent about an hour. Thanks to everyone for participating. Try to get some people up to speed. What we're looking at sometimes, the drawings can be confusing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all I have to report on that. Anyone else? Anyone else? Alrighty, thank you. Moving on, committee reports, ordinance review. Mr. Walsh.
We have no report. We have not met since our last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Comprehensive plan implementation. Mr. Frank.
We have not met since our last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Moving along, administrative site plan review.
Yes, Mr.
Staff.
Chair, we had one approval on May 6th for Southern Maine heat pumps at 560 Main Street. Additional review will be conducted on June 3rd for 30 Old Canal, where a 12,000 square foot contractor flex space is proposed within an existing commercial subdivision.
That's it?
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, ladies and gentlemen, moving along, a public hearing. Item number 1. Public hearing, final subdivision and site plan review, Triano Properties LLC, Gorham Fairways South. A request for final review of a plan for phases 1 and 2 for a mixed-use development on 170 plus or minus acres at the former Gorham Country Club on the south side of McClellan Road, Zone Contract Zone, and South Gorham Crossroads, map 7, lots 6, 7, and 8. The applicant is represented by Dan Riley, PE of Sebago Techniques. Would someone from staff like to introduce us, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Tonight's item is, again, a public hearing and final review of the subdivision site plan and possibly private way plans for phases 1 and 2 of Gorham Fairway South on the south side of McClellan Road within the contract zone and the South Gorham Crossroads District. Just for background, the board has already reviewed the master development framework for this project that was approved almost 2 years ago. The town approved the contract zone in March of 2025. The revised master development plan was approved in June of 25. And the preliminary subdivision and site plan approval for phases 1 through 5 was granted on November 3rd, 2025. So at this stage, the board's focus should be narrower on phases 1 and 2. So those are the plans you have before you tonight for your review. You are looking for things that are submitted in full and supported by the ordinance, and then anything can be condition of approval, as you well know. So first, there are several comments made by peer review professionals and staff. So we would look for the applicant to address all of those in full. But some of the key things for the board to focus on is the review comments from the peer review traffic engineer. Although this is not to the level of triggering a traffic movement permit, there are some comments made by our peer review traffic engineer, and those should be looked at for discussion this evening. One of the other related items is a justification for 3 entrances. So because we're early in this phasing, we might ask the applicant to address, why do they feel they need 3 entrances at this point? Because we don't want to get to the fifth phase and then ask them why they want the 3rd entrance. So now is a good time to ask that question. Erosion control, site location, and stormwater. They will be needing site location and stormwater permits from DEP. One of the review comments was additional erosion control phasing plan and some information provided for that. And then there's other outstanding items, stormwater related from the peer review engineer regarding that. The shoreland zoning, there's a discussion in our peer review memo that talks about the 250-foot shoreland zone area, and the applicant might address that, and the finding that was made today by the code office / director of community development. Then there's some completeness items in terms of what we're looking for a little bit more information. So the open space, trail, and recreation plans, is there enough detail? Does the board feel there's enough detail in those plans to move forward? Or would you like some more information? We're looking for the final water and sewer utility design plans. We have some discussion of that, but we need some more detail what that looks like. And I think those are forthcoming, but still being worked out. So a discussion about that. Landscaping plan, a little more revision with the landscaping that was reviewed by peer review, and there's some comments related to that. One of the parking comments that I teased out is a confirmation of the bedroom counts, and I thought I had seen this somewhere in one of the iterations, so just a discussion and a confirmation about what that looks like for the multifamily units, just to corroborate the parking calculation with that. Bike ped comments. There is a waiver that was allowed for the block length and design. And so one of the things that the board asked for was pedestrian and bike accommodations to be able to, I'm going to call it, cut through the development. So the board should look to see, are there enough of them for you? Are they sufficient? Open space and trails, one of the questions is, they are going to have open space and trails, they are going to have conservation land, and quite a bit of it, but what does that look like? Who's going to own it? Who's going to maintain that? So a conversation with the applicant about that would be helpful. Landscaping, again, there's some peer review comments about that. The water and sewer expansion, they are working with the Portland Water District on that, and so we'd look for some information, again, with that. Homeowners Association documents, we had legal review in May of '25, and there is a red line document that was provided to the applicant, but we seem to have received the same one back without the red lines fixed. So they need to drill into that a little more and figure out what happened. And then finally, we need to keep in mind that the final subdivision approval must be completed within 1 year of preliminary approval. And the master site development plan gets recorded once phase 1 receives final approval and a performance guarantee is posted. That's kind of a reminder, because it's in our ordinance, and we just don't want anyone to forget that. There's a timeline associated with it. And with that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I don't mean to bother you. Do we have a sign-in sheet back by any chance? I apologize. I guess in the meantime, Mr. Riley, you have the floor.
Thank you. Okay. If I can get up on the screen here. There we go. Hi, my name's Dan Riley. I'm an engineer with Sebago Technics, and I'm here on behalf of Triano Properties for final plan review for phases 1 and 2 of the Gorham Fairways. With me tonight is Nick Troiano and John Weeks from Triano Properties. They're the owners. If there are any questions that we can't answer, and Derek Caldwell, the engineer from our office that prepared the traffic studies, is here as well. I'll kind of go through a quick overview of it, and then Derek can follow up with questions or clarifications that are more detailed in terms of the study. So this project has been before you. A quick review for the public and for anyone who's interested. The project did receive preliminary approval for all 5 phases of the project in November. Since that meeting, a site walk was held also in November of 2025. The site law application was submitted in November of 2025, and we expect that their target review period is coming up in mid-June here in a few weeks. We've received some comments on stormwater and the stormwater permit by rule that have been replied to. And we've been proceeding with the offsite pump station water main and force main project. So if the board wants to see that, we can certainly provide it. We've been submitting the application materials or the design plans for that to the water district, to the town's engineer, and the public works department. If the board wants to see those, I have them here, and you can certainly have those. But the offsite pump station is being constructed on the north side of McClellan Road in the areas where we reviewed it and located it during the master plan review. The offsite water and sewer is running down McClellan Road to Brackett Road, then running north on Brackett Road, with the water extending up to connect into the existing water at Black Brook Drive, and the sewer continuing on past New Portland Road to the Crosstown Connector where it ties into the city's gravity system. And then there's a short section of gravity sewer that's improved in the Crosstown Connector. And again, our approach to this project has been to get preliminary approval, which we received last November for phases 1 through 5. We've submitted to DEP for the site location development approvals for phases 1 through 5. And then we're returning to you now for phases 1 and 2 final. In the interim, for the public's interest, we did have a workshop with the planning board on the 18th, and that was primarily geared towards reviewing the overall plan, some of the aspects of the future phases of the project that were part of the DEP's review, to make sure that the town and the town's peer review engineer had the latest copy of everything that DEP was reviewing. And then we also had a pretty extensive discussion about the architecture for the buildings in phase 2. So I jumped ahead of myself. That's what we talked about. So as Carol alluded to, there were waivers that were approved as part of the preliminary approval back last year. And they're carried over into the plans you see before you. There was a waiver to allow the stormwater management facilities to be constructed by phase. So all of the stormwater facilities that are being built as part of the development are being built with the phase that supports the impervious area that they treat. The majority of them on the project that we've talked about a number of times will be constructed in phase 1. And then with phase 1 and 2, and then phases 3 and 4 will include their own independent stormwater utilities. We received a waiver from the high-intensity soil survey requirement of the ordinance. Those surveys are typically required for projects that have net residential calculations, which isn't the case here, or projects that have on-site wastewater disposal, which also isn't the case. So we received a waiver for that. We also received a waiver to construct off-site sidewalks in using the in lieu fee program as part of the ordinance in lieu of constructing sidewalks, since we have no existing sidewalks to connect into off-site. There was a waiver and some discussion that we'll get into a little further here of the requirements of the South Gorham Crossroads District for minimum block length standards, with the understanding that we would have mid-block connections for trail and pedestrians. And we discussed that at length, both in the master plan and the preliminary plan review, on how the site has been designed to respond to the terrain that's fairly steep and rolling, been designed to stay clear of natural resources to the extent that we have no wetland impacts for the project in any of the phases. And our natural resource permitting is really limited to permit by rule for some disturbance for the stormwater facilities within 75 feet of the streams. And I'll pull up in a minute the open space plan that was submitted with the application. It's shown on our overall schematics here, as well as on the site plans and the subdivision plans. The location of existing cart path trails on the site that are going to be maintained and incorporated into a trail system, and the construction of new gravel trails throughout the project site, linking together the open spaces and providing the connections that we talked about at preliminary in lieu of a street connection where it really wasn't warranted based on either the traffic that would be expected from within the project and just some of the steep grades and the site disturbance that constructing a road would require when circulation and interconnection could be provided with a more pedestrian-friendly design than a road and sidewalks. So on the board here and on the screen is the overall plan of the development that the board will be familiar with. This is the same plan that was presented at preliminary and through the master plan process. And to talk a little bit about, make sure you can see the pointer. I don't know if you can, it's showing up here. Oops.
Don't want to say oops.
Well, I'm not seeing my pointer on the screen there, so I don't know. I'll point to the board here instead. So as the board may remember, and this will get to the question about the access points, the plan that's presented here for the 5 phases of the subdivision is entirely consistent with the preliminary approval. There are a number of phases of the project. Phases 1 and 2 are sort of highlighted a little bit brighter here. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen. And I have another sheet here with the actual phases. But the phases that we're seeking approval for now are the single-family residential lots in the road that serves them, running from McClellan Road, from an entrance here that is primarily for the single-family residences, runs through the project site, fingers of dead-end roads following the terrain and some of the ridges on the project, and then connecting up through and back to McClellan Road to provide a looped connection for traffic purposes and for water and sewer, water utilities that the water district is looking for. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is a multifamily residential project comprised of 6 three-story buildings, 12 units each, for a total of 72 units up here at the northwest corner of the site. The remaining phases, you may recall, phase 3 is a mixed-use mixed-use development with commercial uses and residential uses on the upper floors in these 4 buildings and more intensive commercial-only uses on the buildings here. And from our discussions previously and in the plans that we've presented consistently throughout the process, we've always included an entrance here in the center because that was sort of focused on not only keeping some of the residential traffic somewhat separated from some of the commercial, but allowing for some more intensive commercial uses that could justify a third entrance there. All of the parking in those future phases is interconnected. What's being proposed today is just the 2 entrances for phase 1 and phase 2, and then the third entrance in phase 3. And if you remember, as part of the preliminary discussion, there were questions on some of the performance standards in the South Gorham Crossroads District, which requires buildings to be with minimum front setbacks, and how could we balance that with where the development is sort of focused on one side of the road, but we need to adhere to frontages and setbacks on McClellan Road, which is part of the longer-term plan for the other side. And this connection here, that's called Road E on the plans, will actually be a private roadway, and it provides frontage for some of those lots that allows them to be sort of developed independently, either by the applicant or or could be sold independently. So some of the purpose for that entrance is to provide frontage for some of the mixed use and commercial, or the commercial lots that have always been part of the program in those future phases. On screen here, again, a brief just reiteration of what those phases are, a little bit different view of that. Again, the yellow being phase 1, which is the single family lots. That also includes the conservation land that's on it's all of the floodplain along the Stroudwater River, and everything to the south of it would be land that's conserved. And then the lighter green phases up here are open spaces within development, but not conservation land. But the phasing plan on the screen, the yellow being the phase 1 project, including the loop all the way through, of the roadway looping all the way through. Phase 2 is the green phase up in the upper right-hand corner of the plan on the screen. And then phases 3 being the blue in the center site, 4 being the orange on the left in the middle, and 5 being the apartment developments in the center of the site, being the last phase of the project. In the materials that were provided to the board and to the staff, we tried to highlight, we provided an open space plan in an illustrative way to show where some of these connections occur and to speak to the block length question. So again, on the plan here, in white are the phase 1 single family development, connection road, phase 2 here. The areas of the site that are shown with the aerial photo behind it are areas of existing golf course that are going to be open space that are not proposed for development. The area here from the river south is the conservation land. So,
I'm sorry, I can't see your hand. Is that? Thank you.
sure.
Thank you.
No problem. So open space that's without really any proposed development are located sort of on the north side of the river behind the single family lots, and includes an area in between the phases 1 and 4 and 5. Those are open spaces. The applicant has said consistently through the project that those will be available to the public. The brown running through the site in the area plans here are where the trail connections are proposed. Some of those trails are existing cart paths that'll be maintained. Some are new stone dust trails that are used for walking. But we've placed these in locations that would be logical and reasonable for people in the development and the public visiting the property to access in a way that shortens up the walking distance in lieu of making road connections. Question that's come up a couple times that I think we've answered is that those trails will be open to the public. The applicant has made the land available today to the public for use and will continue to do that. There may be times when, especially when the first phase of the project is under construction, that areas of that won't be accessible to the public. But during those times, the applicant has said, and will continue to, that the public will have available parking in the vicinity of the existing golf course clubhouse. While the initial phases are being constructed, people can park there, can access the site and any of the trails through there. And that'll be available to them as the project develops. And then when the phase 3 project, the commercial site is constructed and the parking that goes with it is built, the public will also have access to that. So as the site builds out, parking will be available to the public in this area, either in the existing parking lot or in the proposed parking areas for phase 3. There are connections all through the project. You'll remember during the preliminary review that an earlier plan had this road centered here that we're calling road, I'm going to correct this, I think we call this road E, had at one point come down and connected and constructed through this open space to make a connection in an attempt to shorten up a block length. That road construction really wasn't necessary from a traffic or vehicular standpoint. And so in order to improve the open space availability, limit the disturbance on the site, we've made connections all through the open space with a connection here down through to the open space connections that cross the existing bridges across the Stroud Water. There are connections at each end of each one of these right-of-way. We're not proposing dedicated parking areas in those locations, primarily because of their proximity to some natural resources and the slope of the land in that area where, but people, the streets are available to park on. There's not a restriction on parking on the streets. And so that's the open space plan. Like I said, we tried to connect the predominantly denser residential areas and some of the mixed use areas all through the site at several locations where people can walk and enjoy the project. Overall, the open space occupies about 51 of the 100 or so acres of the property, and 24 of that is located on the far side of the river where that's actual conservation land. The question has come up about ownership of that. The applicant will retain ownership of it until such time as it's transferred. The contract zone had provisions where the town has the first opportunity to accept any of those open space parcels as town-owned land. If the town declined to do that, the applicant would seek to work with the Conservation Trust to take the conservation land on the back half of the site. And if for whatever reason that didn't occur, then it would still be conservation land. It would just be owned by the applicant. So the town has the first rights to that land to decide, when the project's approved and that first phase is constructed, as to whether they want to take the open space or not. And until such time, it's the applicant's responsibility to maintain it as open space as it would be approved on the plan. Today's discussion, as far as site plan, we're happy to answer any of them, but we have talked at length and in our workshop about the site plan for phase 2. So on the screen and here. Is the proposed phase 2 project. Again, located at the northwest corner of the site with access to McClellan Road. There's an arrangement of 6 buildings. They're all 3-story buildings with entrances front and back. And we will talk a little bit about the building elevations and materials. but the buildings are set up responsive to the site, so they have the same appearance from the front or the rear, with a predominant entrance in the center, balconies and patio areas on the sides, and a mix of materials on the building facade. The project is supported by the required parking, the parking requirement for the units based on the unit count and the bedroom count that's proposed, and it's on the plans and in the application, is 84 parking spaces. There are 95 surface spaces included on the site, and that's without counting any parking spaces associated with the 4 single-story garage buildings. So there are 4 garage buildings. I'll have to look at the plans. I'm sorry, I don't remember how many spaces specifically that is, but I can answer that question if we need to. But when we counted the parking spaces to meet the ordinance requirement, we counted the surface parking in the lots and just the parking spaces in front of the garages. So there are additional parking for those unit owners that have a garage, will have a dedicated space in front and within the garage. So we've met the ordinance requirement for minimum spaces without consideration for the additional spaces that are available in the garage. The rest of the program for the Phase 2 multifamily trash collection will be in dumpsters, screened and enclosed with screening, fencing, and landscaping here and here. Parking, landscaping around all of the buildings, and sidewalks in the front with, again, path connections that are graded into the site to provide that are ADA accessible to access the road and some of the commercial portions of the site. If we get into questions, we can certainly talk some more about that, just a blow up of the other plans. The building plans for the Phase 2 buildings, we've submitted the drawings and had a lengthy discussion with the planning board on the 18th. The buildings are 3-story buildings with a variable roof line and facades for visual interest. As required by the ordinance, 3 different materials are presented on each of the facades. On the bottom floor, you have a vertical batten board style siding. The upper 2 floors have a clapboard style siding. There are elements of exposed wood or potentially a composite material, but appearance of wood timber framing that you see over the doorway and in some of the peak dormered roofs of the building. And then there are accent uses of metal roofing on the roof for the entrance at the ground floor and in the awnings or the covers over the windows along the ground floor. So we think we've met the ordinance requirements for the number of materials on the buildings. I'll be glad to come back and talk any more about the architecture of the buildings as well. But again, there was earlier comments that we addressed with the current application, had questions about the street facade and orientation. Again, they include an identical front and rear facade facing both the parking area of the site and the front of the site. The same elevation you saw in the drawing faces both directions. So you have a front door appearance all the way on both sides of the building. The entrances are prominent, highly visible with canopy and overhangs with accent materials. We talked about the variety of materials on the site. And then there were some questions about the mechanical equipment, and that will either be ground mounted along the sides of the buildings in between where it can be screened with landscaping and or fencing, or potentially on the roof and sort of in a well that's sunken down below the ridge line, so it's not visible. So it'll be one of those 2 locations. Again, some renderings of the building showing the front facade material. It's a little bit easier to see the variety of materials on the building there, with views both from the parking areas and along the side, seeing how the site will lay out with the proposed garages. So the main question that I'll talk a little bit about here is the traffic. I think that was probably the new information that's in the application that we haven't talked about before. As part of the preliminary review, the board did ask that we conduct a traffic study. As we've discussed prior, phases 1 and 2 of the project don't trigger the need for a traffic movement permit. And I'll say before I get too far into this that I'm going to try to summarize a lot of the information that's in that study, and Derek is here to answer any specific questions in case I am not as clear as a traffic engineer might be on answering some of them. But I'll talk about this a little bit, kind of working from the site and then moving away from it. One of the first questions that came up with the planning board was what some of these future phases might be and what kind of improvements might be necessary for McClellan Road. We did evaluate the project for that and what the impacts were right at the project site. A turn lane entering into the site or a center turn lane in the road isn't warranted based on traffic volumes for the Phase 1 and 2 project, but they are likely warranted when the Phase 3 commercial uses come online. And so what we've done is we've looked at a couple different concepts of how that road widening of McClellan Road might be accomplished in order to create a turn lane. And we've accommodated in the Phase 2 project here a location of the sidewalk that can accommodate a widening of the road. And what we've looked at is a layout that anticipates a 12-foot wide center turn lane in McClellan Road with a 4-foot shoulder and a curb and an attached sidewalks, all moving towards the project side of the road. During our workshop with the planning board a couple weeks ago, or the 18th, we talked about what the reasoning for that. And essentially, McClellan Road is a 33-foot wide right-of-way that has a 24-foot wide pavement within it. It's not completely centered down the middle of the road. And so a widening that that put the turn lane in the middle of the existing pavement and widening to both sides of the site could be accomplished. But the applicant doesn't control enough of the right-of-way on the north side of McClellan Road to do that. And so what we looked at was if that widening were to occur, to provide a turn lane into the project site at either of the commercial entrances, and then at some point in the future for the development that occurs on the north side of the road would also share those turn lanes. We looked to see how we could accomplish that by widening McClellan Road towards the project site. We had a couple different concepts of that and landed on the sketch that you see here that essentially widens the road sort of from the center line, the existing center line of the road, creating a 12-foot turn lane, an 11-foot travel lane, a 4-foot striped shoulder, and then curb and sidewalk. And we've placed all of the buildings that we're proposing now in Phase 2 well away from that in order to be able to accomplish that kind of expansion in the future. What we would do today, right now, this section of McClellan Road, the water kind of sheets off the road and just drains across the golf course. So the construction of the development in this area will essentially create a ditch between the existing edge of pavement and the sidewalk. We've incorporated drainage into the design in this phase of the project to capture that water, and then essentially when a turn lane is required, the pavement could essentially widen out to that sidewalk where it is now with the installation of a curb without having to remove and replace it, or if it is necessary, a small replacement. But we've addressed the future drainage. We've addressed the interim condition where a ditch would be created here with an inlet that would tie into the project stormwater system. It's all been designed for the pavement area up in that area anyway because it was coming down the project site. And then when we return for the Phase 3 project, we'll respect that same setback. There may be some adjustments to the size and shape of these buildings in order to meet the setback requirements and for grading reasons, but we've designed that turn lane to accommodate what we expect to need in McClellan Road in the future. And then within that, incorporating striping and appropriately for traffic calming and so people turning and driving down the road are aware of those conditions. So moving from the project site out, the traffic study did look at both intersections of McClellan Road, both at South Street and at Brackett Road. And as anyone who's driven down there knows, the predominant pattern of traffic on McClellan Road is cut-through traffic that is seeking to avoid Route 22 or County Road. And that creates some delay times that meet what we call a failed level of service. And a level of service in this context is a letter ranking that DOT applies to roads based on the time of delay a traveler would experience at that location, usually in a peak hour condition. And it's a ranking from A to F. And so when we talk about level of service, we're talking about that letter ranking. And so what the traffic shows out and what people have driven through there is that in the morning, the predominant traffic pattern is people coming down South Street, coming across McClellan Road, then turning right on Brackett Street to Saco Road and making their way that way. And then in the afternoon, that pattern is reversed. So the level of service at that stopped controlled intersection at the end of McClellan Road, where there's a stop sign on the minor road stopping traffic with a high volume major road, the level of service is an F for certain time periods. So in the morning, it's an F in one end, and in the afternoon, it's an F in the other direction. That existing level of service exists today, whether or not the project is developed. A couple of things to point out about that. What we did look at in the traffic study, as we not only did the counts, but did video recordings and observed the traffic patterns. That level of service, or that failing time period of level of service, is short. And it only occurs either in the morning or in the afternoon at one of those locations. It doesn't occur both morning and afternoon at both of those locations. It is only during that peak hour, and some of the delay is due to the volume of traffic that someone has to turn to deal with turning, but also for periods of that time, particularly at Brackett Road, there are times when the existing traffic on Brackett Road backs up from Saco Street to the point that cars turning out have nowhere to turn to. And so this is important when we talk about this, because there were some questions about turning lanes coming out of McClellan Road, either on one lane or the other, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So as we look at that, I think it's important to sort of just lay out that there is no doubt that there is a delay here. It is due primarily to existing off-site traffic. The time or the impact is either in the morning or in the afternoon, depending on which way and location you're looking at. And again, the level of service is impacted by that stopping road on the major road. As we looked at the level of service and in the study, we had no conditions where there was a capacity issue or a level of service issue for the major roadways. So when you're looking at the intersections at either end of the road, there was level of service concerns for the minor road due to that traffic, but the major roads, either South Street, Brackett Street, did not experience delays either in today's conditions due to or with the new project's conditions. And as we look at that, our traffic, or the traffic that would be generated by the project, is somewhat limited. Again, we're less than the 100 peak hour trips that a DOT permit would require. And we wouldn't expect that the project's traffic would have any substantial impact on the South Street end of the project, because most people, assuming that they follow the predominant patterns, are going to go towards Brackett Road in the morning, as most people do, and then returning from Brackett Road in the afternoon, as most people do, returning to the site. So there's a limited or less impact or less traffic generation heading to South Street during those peak hour times. Throughout the day, people may go those directions, but in those peak hour times, the predominant pattern would follow the existing. So when we talk about the delay, when you have this stop-controlled leg of the intersection, this is a common issue on locations where the minor road has a stop sign and the major road does not. And the couple things that come up with that is that we did look at whether a signal control of some kind would be warranted there. Because to address that stopped traffic on the minor road, there's really only a couple things that can be done to do that. You either have to put a traffic signal in, which requires certain warrants and approval by the state. And the project or the pattern here, there is not enough delayed traffic for enough hours in the day to warrant a stop signal, a traffic signal. The other approach you can take for stop control would be making an all-way stop, which would mean installing stop signs, say, on Brackett Road and on South Street, so that everyone had to come to stop. But that kind of creates, when there's so much more traffic on the major road, that creates a whole slew of impacts on the major road, which are also not acceptable. Other than that, the only other solution really is a roundabout, which really wouldn't be justified by the volume of traffic that this project would be expected to contribute. And because that improvement is really addressing a problem that exists today, whether the project is built or not. And so we can talk more about how DOT looks at those things and treats those things if we have questions. And so basically, generally speaking, the findings were that the generated traffic by the project doesn't further reduce that level of service rating for those existing stop-controlled approaches during those predominant traffic patterns. So you have a condition that is a level of service F before the project, and it is a level of service F after the project. And there are really limitations on what can actually be done to alleviate that. We did, to try to answer some of that question in the study, we did evaluate whether turning lanes coming out for those exiting movements from McClellan Road onto either Brackett or South Street could make a difference. And numerically in the models, it does reduce the overall delay someone might see if, say, you created a turn lane at McClellan Road and Brackett Road. Say, you could create a turn lane there where people who wanted to turn left would be able to sit in that lane and wait to the left to allow more people to turn to the right. But the result of that was that it didn't make enough difference that would change the level of service condition compared to what it is today. And so whenever you think about that, so it's not very effective. And introducing a turn lane like that, or even a turn lane, say, on South Street on South Street itself, introduces other concerns that you need to be aware of and weigh based on the traffic impacts. Particularly, say, on Brackett Street and McClellan Road, if you created a left turn lane so that people could try to turn right easier, you've also created a sight distance concern, because now you may have a vehicle parked here that someone turning right has to wait to clear and be able to see past. So what may be a benefit in terms of getting some of those left turns out of the queue may not translate into an actual improvement of the intersection, because people turning right still need to see, and they may not to. And because during the peak hour and during the short time in the peak hour, there's enough traffic backing up on Brackett Road that they don't really have any place to turn. And so what was observed in the video was that when that condition occurred, people zippered themselves in. They allowed people to turn left, like the oncoming traffic in Brackett Road, paused, allowed people to turn right, allowed people to turn left, and the intersection kind of functioned as well as it could, given the volume of the traffic that's in the neighborhood. So to answer and address some of the comments, we looked at turn lanes coming out of the project site. It doesn't move the needle enough to change the level of service that exists today in any really meaningful way. And we have developed some turning concepts for South Street and Brackett site. We've developed the peer review engineer. We just got those comments on Thursday. We have some concepts developed that we'll provide. We think, though, and as we've talked a little more and looked at what else is happening in the area, there's a couple of things that come into play with a turn lane, say, on South Street or Brackett Street. One is that the DOT is started and is undertaking their study of the county road corridor. I know the town's involved with that. It was directed by the legislature after the pause or stopping of at least the intermission on the MTA connector. So the DOT is studying the whole corridor and looking at options, whether that's improvements on the corridor or verifying that the MTA project could be the viable and best choice. So that is underway. We expect that's happening through 26 and into 27. And about the time that's being completed is when we expect this project might build out, and the applicant would be coming back with those future phases, which would also trigger their traffic movement permit. And so any kind of improvement as significant as a turn lane on one of those two roads is really best addressed as part of the TMP process and in light of the DOT's plans for the overall corridor. And the reason for that, there's a couple. When we looked at the turning movements, say on South Street and some of the recent safety information on South Street, we have to be aware that a turning lane set up, say on South Street, does come with some trade-offs. One of the comments from the staff, from the peer review engineer, and they were correct, when we submitted our report, the DOT had issued its latest crash data, which they issue a 3-year rolling count of crash locations. So when we submitted the application, that included 22, 23, and 24. In the interim, from when we submitted it to when the peer reviewer, DOT, issued their latest crash data that now looks back at 25, 24, and 23. There were 2 additional accidents at South Street at the intersection with McClellan Road that changed the crash rating or the rating factor for the site. And so there were accidents related to really 2 things at that intersection. One, a couple rear end accidents or brush by accidents for someone that's southbound on South Street waiting to turn left into Brackett was either rear ended or swiped. And then the remaining exits were failure to yield accidents, where either someone was turning out of McClellan Road or the road across the street across traffic and caused an accident, or turning and failing to yield to oncoming traffic and cause that accident. And so an improvement such as a widening can have a positive impact on those kinds of things. But it also comes with some trade-offs for the minor street. And you can imagine that the vehicles that now have to turn out of, say, McClellan Road onto South Street now have to cross 2 lanes of traffic instead of 1. So that's a consideration that comes into it. And then another factor that DOT scrutinizes, and they will on South Street for sure because it's a state road, and Brackett Street as part of their whole study area, is that those kinds of turn lanes, when they're not needed for capacity reasons on that through road, tends to increase speeds on the road. As you can imagine, people tend to drive as fast as they're comfortable. Sometimes a big wide stretch of pavement with a turn lane that's not occupied by vehicles for other than maybe an hour in the morning and afternoon can tend to increase speeds. So all of that needs to get considered, and it is considered as part of the TMP, and we would want to address anything of that magnitude in that process, because that also takes into account the project's contribution to those conditions and some of the existing conditions in the roadway. And in our case, the schedule of DOT study and our traffic permitting falls right in line. Related to the accident data, like I said, there were 2 additional, and we agree that this does warrant some safety considerations to be looked at the end of the road. We don't think that a full turn lane configuration is really what would be warranted for this project at this phase, but certainly working with the town to implement some safety improvements, flashing signage, speed control on the approaches, striping, painting to address some of those things would certainly be an appropriate approach to look at this time. So trying to answer some of the other questions, we talked a little bit about the pump station and the offsite water. If the board wants to review that, we have the plans. The town has the plans. I'd be happy to look at them. I have them tonight. The final plans for the pump station, the offsite approvals have been submitted, address all the comments that we've received. We've requested the letters of capacity from the water district that go with that for this phase of the project. They have provided us a general letter that we use for the DEP applications, but with the final letter we're waiting on. They have our responses to the comments, and I think that'll be forthcoming here shortly. The DEP permits, clearly we need those permits before we can start construction. Those are in. We received some small comments on the stormwater design that's been addressed, and some comments on the PBR, the permit by rule submittal, wanting some photographs of the areas, and those have all been responded to. There was comments in the application there about the private way, and apologies if I misunderstood. My understanding was that a separate private way plans weren't required when the private way was part of a subdivision. And so we've added the private way notes to the subdivision plan. We have not prepared separate private way plans. We can certainly do that, but that would be basically a duplication of what you see today. So if that's a condition that needs to be done, we're happy to do that. We had just misunderstood the requirement there and believed that the private way notes on the plans that are all detailed in the application were sufficient, but we can add that if we need to. As far as some of the peer review and staff comments, we have evaluated all the fire truck turning movements in the project site. As we've discussed before, all of the streets and intersections are generally 90-degree intersections with paved widths that meet all the town standards, so we wouldn't expect that there'd be a turning movement for a truck on a town standard design road. And that was borne out as being correct in the turning movements. The hammerhead dimensions at the end of the dead-end streets are all designed to town standards, and we've got plans that demonstrate the ability to turn that around. And again, all that evaluation we did, we have the plans, we'll submit them to the staff. We can look at them tonight, but they all confirm that the truck turning movements are adequate. There were some comments from the peer review engineer. They'd asked for a larger scale lighting photometric plan, which we have and will provide that. For a larger scale, we meet all the lighting requirements, but we'll provide that to them for confirmation. Regarding the landscape peer review comments, there weren't really any comments that needed to be addressed. There were some suggestions. I think they found that the plan was in keeping. They asked if there could be some other species of street trees, and we can certainly do that. The ones that we presented on the plans are the ones that are listed in the ordinance, and so we use them, but there are certainly other species that could be used. We believe this meets the requirements, and so that's what we've shown on the drawings. There were some questions about soil volume and whether the species planted are suitable for the setting, and they are. We design commercial scale landscaping all over the state, and the plants that are selected are done for that reason, to make sure that they're hardy in that kind of constructed landscape environment. And certainly, as you know, if there's any question or confirmation of where that final tree placement is related to a utility, we'll adjust that as needed. The engineering peer review comments, we did see those. They're all actually addressed already. There were some comments about some details on a sewer manhole. There were a number of comments that apply to future phases of the project, but none of we'll address officially all of those peer review comments, but none of them are a concern for us or a substantial change to anything that you have in front of you. So with that, I'll pause. Like I said, Derek Caldwell, our traffic engineer, is here to answer traffic questions. I don't know if I addressed all the things that Carol raised, but I'm happy to follow up if you have any questions.
Questions? We're going to go right to the public hearing? Yep. You all set? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing, and in our new order of business, if anyone would like to speak in favor of this project, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. Again, anyone who wants to speak in favor of this project? I see no one rising. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is anyone that would like to speak against this project, please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. Again? Anyone? I see no one rising. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is anyone that would like to speak about this project being neutral, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. Another busy night. I see no one rising. I will now close the public hearing. Thank you. Members of the board. Or staff.
Go on, go, Bill.
Yeah, so I have a question on the traffic. They detailed the level of service is already an F, and then make the argument that, well, they're not reducing the level of service because it's already the lowest it can be. So, what do the regulations tell us? What is our obligation? If something's already an F, it doesn't get you a pass for not lowering the standard, I wouldn't think. So, what's the requirement?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things going on here. So you're correct. Reducing an F to an F, doesn't go to an F minus, right? We don't get a worse level of service, but it's certainly not improving it by adding more traffic to it. We could all understand that it would. Now, this is a project that I think typically we try to think of this as we got one bite at the apple with this, with projects that come through here. This is a little bit different. There's multiple phases. They've acknowledged that while phase 1 and 2 don't trip the level of TMP through the DOT, that threshold will get passed in subsequent phases. So there is another level that will get tripped where we will be looking at these intersections further out from the project. Now, I think Sebago Technics has done a pretty good job explaining, and they certainly can expand on this, but kind of the situation that's happening on both ends of McClellan Road. You have the South Street and you have Brackett Road. And we've discussed this many times, but you do have very specific peak hours where the condition that currently exists is certainly not getting any better, right? But those peak hours are conditional upon what direction people are traveling in. I'm glad that they hit on it tonight, because it was one thing I would have spoken up about. There's certainly no silver bullet to solving traffic issues like this, but with the increase in crash data over the past few years, they did acknowledge that there could be some safety mitigation that gets implemented with a phase like this. And so I would continue to look for discussion between the town and the applicant to potentially add flashing signage, additional signage, and the like, while expecting that as the future phases move through, actual physical construction could take place in the form of maybe some widening of shoulders or some turning lanes on the major routes. And I will point out that the point is made and well received that the addition of lane width and pavement in these higher speed, higher volume roads is a direct contributor to higher speeds, specifically in the off-peak hours when you don't have the vehicular traffic in those locations. So I think it was pretty well summarized. Certainly, the town would be looking to work with the developer on trying to mitigate some of the safety concerns at those intersections.
Yeah, I acknowledge that this isn't a problem that the developer has created, what I'm looking for is our obligation as a planning board not to make a problem worse. Right? We know it's going to be worse. So what's our obligation as a planning board not to contribute to making the problem worse? And what in our ordinances allow us, or should we be considering when we make that decision? That's what I'm seeking from the staff. And if you can't answer it tonight, that's fine. And if we need to talk about it more, we can, but then I won't be ready to make a vote on it. If you can't explain to me what our obligation is about not making a problem that we know is bad to make it worse and to have additional potential impacts to traffic accidents, et cetera. So I would like to know what our obligations are. So I'll just leave that out there.
There's a certain level in the ordinance, level of service, that they can't go below, but it's already below that. The existing condition is below that.
Right, so
what improvement can the town and the applicant work through that we all can agree on? We haven't had that conversation yet.
fair. Okay.
On the traffic, I have
Please.
something to add. So when I was listening to the explanation of, and I can imagine it, because although my cut-through is Day Road instead of McClellan Road, so I'm not as familiar with McClellan Road, but at the ends of the road, rather than a four-way stop sign just is like out of the question. But if you had a right turning lane, just go off with a little island in there. So your right turning lane goes off, it has like a gradual getting on, so it's wide enough like you're getting on a highway. Is that a possibility to have that turning lane going?
You mean at the end, at the Brackett Road end?
Yeah, when McClellan hits Brackett, just prior to it getting to that stop sign, if it could turn off, if you had a right turning lane that created a little, island. I know plow trucks don't like islands and all that, but it would create a little right travel lane. Maybe a few cars could even queue up there, and the left turning people would not be in the way. They could just stop and then.
So,
I'm not a civil engineer. I'll go on the record, but I can tell you I live there. And the problem is, as you head towards Portland on Brackett, just before McClellan, there's a dip, right? And you radius down. If that was smoothed out, you would have a better line of sight. But I travel this almost daily, and as you come over that crest, here come the traffic off McClellan, and if everyone is agreeable, we take turns. And if you're a little bit aggressive, you're not going to let this person come in from McClellan. It's a very, very dangerous intersection regardless. Historically, that really mushroomed when the Bernard Rines Highway was developed. We all remember the time when traffic was coming through in town and people would stay on School Street or whatever it is on that end. As soon as Bernard Rines Highway was developed and finished, it took relief off of downtown Gorham. Traffic, I'll admit, has continued to grow because of people moving west. But as soon as the Bernard Rines Highway was completed, traffic would go in and around and then scoot over on McClellan. And then all of a sudden McClellan, I've been there for 35 years, all of a sudden McClellan is now, again, it's a bartering. Hopefully, and it is, a short period in the morning, maybe an hour and a half, depending on when you get going. The same thing late in the afternoon. And it's getting earlier in the afternoon because people know they're trying to fight the traffic coming backwards. The toughest part for me as a driver is that crest on Brackett, and I don't know mathematically how far it is, 100 feet, a couple hundred feet. You know that crest. As soon as you come down, and oops, there's McClellan. And unless you're prepared for it, it's a very dangerous intersection. Thank you. Thank you.
And because I live in a subdivision that's right off of McClellan, we regarded the McClellan, when the Rhines bypass was completed, we regarded McClellan as an extension of the Rhines bypass because that's what it's become. Oh, and another thing, as long as I've got the mic, Chuck?
Yes, sir.
Your comment too about left turn lanes, when they're not used, you've got a wider road and people said, oh, I can go a little faster. Do you regard that as a bad thing? I mean, you could regard that as a good thing because it improves the overall efficiency of traffic movement because people are going faster, getting where they want to go. Just a thought.
If you're asking for my personal opinion, I don't mind driving faster, certainly. But professionally speaking, I think it's an easy correlation between speed and safety. And any road that somebody is comfortable driving a particular speed, they will drive that speed. So you can set speed limits at 30 miles an hour all day long, but if it's long and straight and has a sea of pavement, people will people go as fast as they're comfortable going. So yeah, I think there's pros and cons for any of it, and unfortunately, like I said before, there's not a silver bullet to solve anything. So I think safety is certainly something we can attack in these intersections.
Mr. Frank, I will testify that if I'm on McClellan, no matter the time of day, and I want to go left onto Brackett, I don't care what time of day. Nighttime might be worse if you don't see a headlight coming towards you, because you're getting your nose out, you're looking, you don't worry so much about going towards Portland. You're worrying more about you're out there, and then, oh my God, because people are coming east or towards McClellan to go into Portland, that left-hand turn, there needs to be my opinion, a much greater line of sight. I'm not a civil engineer. I know we're not helping the situation.
okay.
Traffic is an issue, that entire area, regardless of what project, regardless of this project. The project doesn't exist right now, but it needs, I don't know what the remedy is. Making wider roads doesn't always remedy the situation. It just makes it in a shorter path and congestion. Please, Mr. Walsh.
First up, Dan, that was a great summary of the whole project. There's a lot of detail you packed in there. And you educated me a little bit on the traffic options and the pros and cons. But I'm kind of siding with Bill, and the approval of this project, which you've been working towards, is going to make this worse. And what is our duty as a planning board? And I think Bill has really teed that question up. And the fact that, Carol, you just said that conversation hasn't entirely been fleshed out. That gives me a real reason to pause here, and I'm like, oh, drats. Because we don't have a solution. We have lots of war stories on there, but no solution. And I'm going to struggle with that. I can tell you right now, there's so much else here I'm ready to approve. This one I'm really going to struggle with.
Yeah, and I can speak to the ordinance question. I'll wait till everybody has their comments. But
And because one of the things I was going to suggest, one thing about this project, you have been right up front with the information, the engineering, the concept, the ideal. Mr. Troiano, you seem to want to go above board on many, many things. You've stated that, and I appreciate that. So I'm just one of the things I had him prepared to say tonight is, what can you do, knowing that it's coming down, no pun intended, down the road, but knowing that phase 3 is coming and the TMP and all the DOT stuff is coming, what can be done now? Because making this an F minus, whatever, I'm going to really struggle trying to vote for approval of that, knowing that we're going there. We didn't have much public input tonight, but we've had public input in the past. We know what it is. It's traffic. So, but if there's something that can be done, you say moving ahead with putting in a turning lane. I mean, I'm just trying to think of ideas. Chuck, could you block? This would be a good one. Block a left-hand turn off of South Street onto McClellan. Put a median down there now. It would stop the problem one way, wouldn't help the other way, but if you couldn't go left off of South Street onto McClellan, then it would reduce a force bunch, whole bunch. I don't know how you get home. I'm just trying to come up with something here, but that's it. This is a real big issue.
This is where the traffic engineers and the staff need to sit in the same room and debate what are the best options.
Yeah, and when does that occur? Because knowing that it's all going to come in phase 3, great. But here we are at phase 1, and we know we're adding to the problem. I think Bill has just really raised up the primary question here.
Please, Ms. Nichols.
So we already have a bad situation, which we know is absolutely going to get worse. And we can't just I feel like I don't want to just turn my head to that and say, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We know that there's another phase coming on that is going to require traffic be dealt with. Can we, and it does seem like the traffic light is going to be the only way of fixing it, really fixing it. Is a traffic light that expensive? Is that why we're not just talking about putting a traffic light in, or is it like everybody
I can
hates
speak to
traffic
that.
lights, or?
A traffic light won't meet the warrants that DOT requires to install it. So DOT controls the installation of traffic lights in the state, and it doesn't meet the warrant that DOT would approve a traffic signal.
Yet. It doesn't meet it yet, but if they know this next phase is coming, if they wait.
Yeah, because the issue here, the part of, and I'll let Derek answer if you want it in detail, but in quick, easy terms, you have to have that level of service at a low enough rate for enough hours during the day to warrant it. Having that occur, even if it's very bad, for 1 hour doesn't meet the warrant. And that's the simple fact, and DOT won't allow a traffic signal to be put in if it doesn't meet the warrants. And so the traffic signal simply doesn't meet the warrant that DOT would approve it. As far as your ordinance goes, I agree. I can speak to it. I was going to call it up. I don't have it here. What it says in short terms is that you can't make a level of service D, drop to a lower level of service, meaning you can't go from a D to an E or an E to an F. And your ordinance is silent on the matter where if you are a D and you remain a D, or if you are an E or remain an E, or an F and remain an F. It's silent on that. So the obligation under the ordinance is to not take things that are D and reduce them. And that's what it says. And doesn't know that makes it easier, but that's what the ordinance obligation is. To answer your question regarding the potential for a kind of a right turn slip lane on Brackett Road, I think the other comments that came up, there's a couple things that are at issue with that. If we're going to design something like that, you have to have enough taper and run-up length for that vehicle to get up to speed and get merged into the traffic that's coming at it from the north. And in this case, before you get to that distance, there's a bridge over the Stillwater River. So that would require a new bridge, or an expanded bridge, which is a significant issue. The other issue with that, as we talked about, is like, are the sight distances right to be able to do that? Because now, instead of stopping and turning right and looking at the approach coming over the hill, you're now turned, looking in your rearview mirror at a vehicle that might be coming over the road. So I don't know that that slip turn can be done here because of those two constraints. We did look at that. And like I said, the only reason that we didn't propose a left turn lane, which is simply because it doesn't, given the increase in traffic that this phase of the project produces, it doesn't make a meaningful difference in terms of the level of service and queuing. Could it change it a few minutes one way or the other? It probably could, but it's not enough to get it from that level of service designation from one to a better one. And like I said, the way the state looks at that, that's what they use, is that ranking. The way your ordinance looks at it, it's that level of service ranking. So understand it's all it's a difficult situation, but it's exacerbated by some constraints here that just make a traffic signal or a stop control that would be if there were, for the capacity reasons, would be the approach, impractical at that location. So could, again, safety matter be implemented there potentially? We definitely agree that at South Street that would be appropriate. At Brackett Road, we don't have the accident history that we have at South Street. And like, I think Nick will get up here, I mean, the other piece of this that the town created the zoning with unlimited density and is encouraging the density to occur here. And the applicant has worked at that. There are real financial considerations. They're spending a lot of money to bring sewer and water into this area. And Nick can certainly speak to this, but the first phase of the project would be hard pressed to absorb all of that cost and a major traffic improvement, when those improvements really need to be looked at in the context of what DOT is doing and the traffic movement application, which will address these intersections and likely the next ones going out when the development reaches that point. So it's not an attempt to kick this down the road, but more an attempt to try to address the situation within the constraints we have and within what the state regulatory agencies are already doing.
If you don't mind, some of us remember when that bridge was replaced, 1997, I think. That entire bridge got washed out. So that's been a replacement in the last 25, 30 years. And when that bridge was wiped out, that was before Bernard Ryan's Highway was there. Traffic, it was just worse than it is now. Some of us remember that.
I was there.
Remember that? Yeah. I mean, we got to every intersection and every bridge was washed out. You had to go backwards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you. Yes, please.
Just a general comment, really to my fellow board members. The phase 1 and 2 apparently doesn't warrant traffic signals and stuff like that. And I don't think we should spend time and thought and energy on solving problems that are more likely to appear before us in phase 3 and onward. And let's deal with that. Let's cross that proverbial bridge when we come to it, instead of trying to solve it now when it's not needed.
Thank you, Mr. Frank, and there'll be a different planning board perhaps sitting at that time. Is that what you're saying? Maybe?
I didn't say that at all.
No.
I'm discussing the here and now, Mr. Chair.
Sure, thank you.
Let's stay focused.
Thank you. You're correct. I can't help but feel, perhaps for Colonel Benson, that we have some obligation to think of the future as well, because it's coming down the road, no pun intended.
Can I just ask
Please.
when is phase 3? What's the timeline between 1 and 2 and then 3?
So I think that's a good topic. So I think, the thing that needs to be really thought here is how quick the project's going to move or how slow it's going to move. So, the original thought process was this is a 15-year project. I think that's going to be probably about right. I think it's probably going to be 20 years from start to finish. We're already year 3 just to get to this point, year 2.5. A lot of all the faces up there right now have been part of the process to get to this point. A couple of new faces. But I think the whole thought process was water, sewer, water, sewer, water, sewer, water, sewer. The team, John, Sam, myself, and the excavation guys, Dan, the Sebago team, we've done a lot of work to try to get gas in the area. There's been a lot of stuff that we're trying to push to improve South Gorham. I think that, one of the things that needs to be thought about here is we're not doing this for the quick payday. Unfortunately, it's years and years and years to get to a break-even point, but it's the longevity of the project to get to that point. Where the town has been working with us, and quite like we work with the town, one of the biggest things with that contract zone is that we are going to fulfill the obligation of everything, and we're going to make everything, what we said it was going to be, and try to give the town everything that we promised. With that being said, to answer your question, phase 1 and 2 are going to start hopefully within 70 to 90 days from the probationary period. So if you guys were to give us 4 yeses tonight, we have a 30-day period that we would wait just to make sure that there's no issues. So every month that kicks back, it's really 60 days because it's 30 days for the hearing and then 30 days for the probationary period. We were hoping to get the water sewer in this year, so fiscal year 26. That'd be great to do that. NewCo is also planning, our Unitil Natural Gas is also planning on running the gas to that South Gorham area that we're working with. Above and beyond that, the house lots would start this fall or into next spring, and phase 3 would probably be tail end of 28. So it's probably 2 years out. I think that the thought process here, though, that needs to really be thought about is with the amount of liquidity or cash that is involved on the front side right now, it needs to really be thought of how much we're going out, reaching out and truly, putting $6 million into South Gorham. That does not include the gas. Does not include the gas. That is just water, sewer, pump station, with the anticipation of the town tying into our pump station and our water down the road to extend further into South Gorham. I think one of the thought processes needs to be, how can we really kind of give us a little time to get our feet wet? You guys were excellent with Fairway Commons. You gave us the exclusion for the well and septic. That was very much appreciated. It got us a proof of concept. We could see the demand in the area. We're still selling those units to this day, and probably for the foreseeable few months. One of the big things for us is just trying to get our feet, get the project going, acquire everything, get everything kind of situated, and then see. With that being said, the TMP is likely going to be done and probably start working on the improvements before phase 1 and 2 are actually completed. The reason why is if we don't do that, we won't be able to pull permits for phase 3, because that's got to be done usually before permits are pulled. So that might be 20 months, it might be 18 months, it could be 24 months. Now, with that all being said, and this is the part that, is a really important thing, we could go put these turn lanes in, right? Spend hundreds, probably millions of dollars, and I don't say that lightly because that's probably what it will end up being. And then DOT might come back and say, we don't want that. And then we're gonna have to rip it all out because we went out at the local level and developer level and trumped what the state level is gonna want. So we're already spending so much money, I'd be very hard pushed to spend more money not knowing what the TMP is going to require. So then it's at that point we shelf the project, wait for the TMP, and we're doing way more improvements than we needed for phase 1 and 2. At the end of the day, it was a functioning golf course. You probably had 50, 70, I could be wrong, I think it was probably 50 to 70 trips a day on average, and that doesn't include weekends. We're pushing like 5 to 6 trips right now. So eat morning and night. There's 5 people living there. So I mean, we're underutilizing what the existing golf course had if it had still been open. I think that's a point that really needs to be thought about. And these houses are not going to push that much more. And I would be hard pushed to think that 75 houses and 72 condo units are going to sell out and drive more traffic in a 24-month period than the TMP wouldn't have already been started and probably activated to get going. So I think that needs to be a thought. You guys are assuming that we're full capacity day 1 of this approval. The capacity doesn't start until we've hit, 75 houses, 72 units, and they're all built out and fully functioning and living. That takes some time. I mean, you're talking 36 months. I don't think that TMP is not done and activated by that time. So that's just something I want you guys to really take into consideration. One, the financial stress that it's already putting on the project, and I know the banks and everybody else have probably seen that too on our performance. The second thing ends up coming down to how quick this project's really not going to move. You know what I mean? It's a big project. It's not a small project, and the improvements are going to happen at the rate DOT I think would require them. 100%, and I think it should be left to the state, not to the local, because unfortunately it's going to get trumped eventually anyway. And I'd rather not waste more money to get to the same final grade. And not to mention, at that point, if it doesn't work, it was a waste of money. Because we don't know that it's going to work. DOTs, unfortunately, sometimes their stuff doesn't work. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's, it's the end all be all answer. So hopefully that, kind of gives a little more insight. And I'm more than happy to answer any other questions as well.
Thank you. That was very helpful because I think in the big picture, it makes sense that, totally not to make some major changes and then find out that it's all got to be ripped up and redone because of the next phase starting in. So it gives me, I'm much more comfortable with going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, please.
Yeah, actually, that was some very good things to think about. I'm still struggling with this, but I guess one thing that kind of occurred to me as I listened, listen to the point that Bill has brought and what is our duty, and I listen to what you've brought out and go, okay, none of us here can control who's cutting across McClellan. I mean, that's fact. We're not going to put up blocks. We're not going to narrow the roads so people can't pass through. We're not going to do anything like that. It's just going to get worse over time. We don't know what's being built in Standish or whatever, and sending more traffic our way. So eventually, it's going to get worse before it gets better. This project is going to trip some things that are going to start the process to make it better. Is it not?
I would say it's safe to say it will, for sure. And hopefully generate tax money for the town of Gorham before somebody in Standish builds the same development, and then we gotta do the upgrades, and we're not even getting the tax money in Gorham.
And I appreciate what you were saying about the timeline. I've been living in a construction site for 4 years, and I know it's a slow process. It doesn't happen very quickly. And 80 house lots, and then the multifamily, it's going to take time. So I'm struggling with this, and I fully expected you to say exactly what you just said about doing anything temporary before DOT has come back, because I've seen them have to rip stuff out that was well-intentioned. So
one of the big things too that we didn't talk about, and it was something that it was part of our discussions with the councilors, and it was a big one for quite a few of them. Councilor Segal and Lou Sims. We're probably going to have a bus station up at the top of the hill at some point when it's warranted for the Husky Lines. That will slow down some traffic for the anticipation of more pedestrian connectivity and bikers and everything else. So just food for thought. I mean, it might be phase 3 before it's enough capacity to require it, but it's just another thing that's another thought process for that phase.
Well, I'm glad you just mentioned town council, because one of the things I was just going to say to my fellow board members here is, and to the staff, is something of this nature, and given the fact that there's been a lot of public interest in this, and something, would this be subject that we had a workshop, productive, informative workshop with this group, but should there be another workshop that includes the council to let them in on the discussion? Because let's face it, we approved this tonight, and there's a lot of things here that can be approved. It's a good project. This could be a lot of crap thrown our way for this, and I'm not sure that we deserve it, but it could happen. And I'm just thinking, should the council be part of the? Should they weigh in on the decision that we are being faced with to make? That's a purely political question.
You want to answer that?
In my tenure, I've not known the council and the planning board to have a workshop together. And I'm not sure that it has a precedent in Gorham.
And I think Carol mentioned to you in working in another state, this was something that was done, and I found it helpful.
Working in other towns in Maine, I've had it as a thing, put it that way. It doesn't mean it wouldn't happen. We just have to ask the questions.
Are you proposing to hold off until that workshop before moving this forward?
I'm just throwing ideas out.
Just food for thought, and I'm just throwing this out there. When we did the contract zone, a lot of the back and forth was better to keep it to groups of 7. And I'm only saying that because when you start to get 14 heads in a room, including the developer side and the town side, it becomes unproductive. And I'm just saying, based on historic stuff, it becomes a little bit unproductive. Everybody wants something different. And like I said, I think the biggest thing right now is everything is built to current spec. Town roads, everything's built to current spec. And Dan and the Sebago team did an excellent job at, one of the big things, and we laughed about, the town's requirement for this zone, right? This is a little off topic, but it kind of beats back to the same thing. Town's requirement through council, right, is all buildings need to be 25 feet off of road edge. 25 feet. But if we started building phase 2 at 25 feet off road's edge, you would never be able to widen the road, ever. Never. You'd be grandfathered, we'd be grandfathered in, never be able to do it. We came out in the forefront and we said, we can't do this. We can't actually meet the town requirement to be 25 feet off road spec. Because if we did that, we never would be able to widen the road. So we took it upon ourselves to come out and raise our hand and say, we can't do this because of the road spec. Can we move the building back? It would have been wise of us if we were in it for the financial gain just to put the building on 25 feet and say we can never widen this road. But that's not who we are. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it so that we can widen the road. We can do everything right. We actually feel that it'd be very advantageous for the retail side to have more traffic going down McClellan Road. Right now, it's a residential road. That's what it is. It's a residential road. If we can get it up to a 3-lane road at some point, I think it'd be advantageous and we'd be all for getting it to that point. I don't think it's anywhere near phase 3. It's probably closer to phase 5, 6, and 7. But there's going to be some minor changes for sure, phase 3. I think that DOT would 100% say that. But I think the point that needs to be made is we're doing everything we can. We're putting underground power so we don't have to worry about the telephone poles on the street, because the telephone poles in the street would end up being in the lane. So that's why we're doing the underground. Sidewalks getting swaled back so that everything in the swale would get filled in and end up becoming the existing ditch line or the road. There's a lot of thought, money, and, technical stuff getting done behind the scenes to be able to make this expansion happen before DOT even weighs in. So I think one of the big things is, we've put so much time and effort to get to this point, and like I said, I think everyone here sitting here has put as much time in, and council's put a lot of time in as well to get us to this point. There's been a lot of thought, and I know Chuck's been great to work with. He's been absolutely fantastic, going back and forth with everything and kind of making sure everything's there. Same with Terry Deering, and making sure that the roads are all built to spec, everything's kind of done to the town's requirements and everything. I just would hate to see us go backwards by having so much input that it kind of puts us back months when we're at the finish line. I think if that makes sense.
Look at me.
I'm looking at everybody.
Looking at everybody. Yeah, I'd like just to editorialize the council that signed up on this contract 2 years ago is different than the council that is sitting now.
Could I ask some questions about something other than traffic?
Well, by all means.
Okay. All right.
We have a 10 o'clock curfew.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. All right. I'll just talk about the open space. I've been saving one of these, the colorful ones, because I like them. And I'm looking at the one from back in October. It's dated October 29th. And when we see talk about the cut-throughs, the pedestrian pass-throughs, the long block issue, there was one shown, it's not shown today. It was shown, kind of comes down from the clubhouse area. And I'm looking at the drawing today. I don't see it on there. Am I missing something?
I don't remember that.
Sure. That is here. There's a connection.
That can be accomplished. I don't know why that's.
It's not on there, and I think
It's two things. One issue with that is just that we are close to a stream here.
Yeah.
But we can certainly get a connection here. I'm not sure that we didn't have an intentional reason to eliminate that. So.
Okay, I'd like to see that back on there, if that can be, because that, getting this whole issue of the long blocks, and this was your solution to that, and that was, otherwise you only have one in that entire stretch along Road B.
Yeah, I think we created the second one because of some slope considerations to get it to a reasonable grade, but I don't think we intended to take that off. So that can be accommodated. That's no problem.
Carol, you get that?
Yes, I actually have another on phase 1 comment.
Okay, all right.
Very specific one I thought you would all notice.
So Ms. Walsh, if you wanted to incorporate that, we're talking about a pedestrian connection between lots 5 and 6 is the area that we're looking at.
Yeah, it would be just to the northeast of lot 6. Yeah, between 5 and 6, exactly, all right?
If I may tag on to that. In Phase 1, there is a connection that is, it looks like a J. It kind of loops, but then it ends at a street in the middle of nowhere. So it would be nice if it led somewhere to cross into another connection. That was my
So we can,
thought for Phase 1.
you're talking about this location here?
Yes, sort
Yeah,
of
we
looks
can,
like a
we
fish hook.
can, in the, my apologies, in the full development plan, there's a crosswalk there. When we showed phase 1 only, we didn't put the crosswalk in because there's no place to cross to until phase 2 gets constructed. But we can certainly put a crosswalk across there to tie into the sidewalk that will be built.
Thank you. Okay, and we're talking about the the number of entrances of off of McClellan. So you're going to have the ones for the 2 established roads for, what is it, Road A, and then the one with on the other end for the multifamily. The entrance for where the old clubhouse is now, where your office is, I assume you're going to continue to use that through construction. It's just not going to be developed out into a road, a connecting road at this time. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would remain until at some point during the phase 3 construction when that gets reconfigured.
That makes sense. All right, turning to stormwater. Dan, I think you won't be surprised by this. You have a number of different stormwater systems here. And when we talk about the section on page 17, it talks post-construction stormwater management. I'd like to see something in the conditions that talk about how the HOA or condo association, whatever, will be educated on the stormwater systems. Because Dan and I on another project that's in my backyard, we have come across the issue of when the stormwater systems are turned over to a group of homeowners, they may have no freaking idea what they're working with on how to manage what is, an engineered system. So I think, and this is more so something I'd like to see built into our conditions of approval as we move forward, because these are becoming a great, a common part of a residential development. Need to educate the homeowners on what the heck they're going to be managing if we want them to be successful. So I'd just like to see that, not only for this project, but other projects moving forward. And then one specific one, and this gets into it really it says about lots 50 through 54, talks about drip edge filters. Well, the whole issue of drip edge filters, as I've been learning about stormwater systems, can be totally messed up if homeowners then go and put up gutters. So again, this comes back to educating homeowners. If you have a residential system that has drip edge filters, and most people don't even know what the heck they are, and they have a purpose and what they're supposed to use for, and then the homeowner, like me, just goes and slaps up a gutter and totally negates the usefulness of the drip edge filter. Damon's shaking his head down there. And so again, one of these education things, I'd like to see some of that, something built into a condition that some education will be done to the future homeowners, not only in this project, but moving forward. And let's see, I think, oh yes, just a question about the open space. You said I know the town has the first option on it. And then the town, if the town passes on that option, will the deed remain with the homeowner association?
Yeah, there's what Nick was saying, there'll be a master association that's responsible for the open space and the infrastructure.
Yeah, it's kind of like what.
That goes for stormwater too.
Yeah, okay. All right. And then just lastly, one thing, you've talked a lot about the multifamily units and what they're going to look like. Single family. I think we've talked about this in the past. Do you have is there a plan of how these will be built? Who will be building them? Will there be an any architectural guidelines to have common look to the homes. You haven't, can you update us on that?
Yes, so we are working with some local builders, which I think is great because it might slow down some other single-family building in Gorham, right? Meaning it all comes to us instead of having us going and several other developers going or several other builders going. And, you know, we're looking for the farmhouse feel. I think that's really what we're going. Our lots, because the 5,000 to 9,000 or 10,000 is kind of what we had to stay within for the contract zone, except for the 4 excluded lots. Ranches aren't really conducive, nor are they that desirable right now, and they're really expensive to build. But, you know, our plan's gonna be 2-story. Usually they're gonna have a basement, 2-car garage. Ideally, you know, they're gonna be all 10,000 square foot lots. They're gonna be, you know, I guess the best way to look at it is farmhouse. You're gonna have your 3 building materials. You're gonna have your front porch, your back porch. It's gonna be all composite materials. We're not using any, you know, unfinished wood or pressure treated stuff. Most of the houses are gonna have patios. It's gonna be granite light posts, granite mailboxes. It's gonna be more, you know, I'm not gonna say, you know, I guess modern / farmhouse, higher end feel, I guess would be the way to put it. You're not gonna have the ditch lines out in the front yards. It's all gonna be underground drainage, right? That's the way that Sebago had everything set up. So I guess that would probably be the way to put it, the best way to put it. Is that kind of what you're looking for, or do you want more
No,
detail?
that's a good description, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, please, Mr. Frank.
Following along on the public aspect of things, the public amenity space, which looks to be...
Is there a drawing, please? Mr. Frank, is there a drawing number, please?
Oh, yeah, oh, gosh, I'm looking at the small
This top one? Is it the top one on the small packet?
SB 100.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I should have started off with that. Anyway, the public amenity spaces looks to be in phase 4 and 5, which is development-wise way down the road. What do you foresee there when people are starting to live in phases 1 and 2? What's going to be in there?
In like these areas here in the center?
Well,
phase
I'm
4.
having trouble seeing.
So I think you're alluding to some of the open space here.
Yes, exactly.
It will remain golf course as it is today until this phase is developed.
Okay.
And when that phase is developed, that'll become a more developed landscaped open space with the trails in it.
Okay, so the amenity is just going to be open land? They're
Yes.
not going to have playground sets or benches?
Yeah,
or-
currently in the plans that you have in front of you, the only sort of, I guess, large-scale constructed amenity is going to be the dog park area here at that portion of the site that's identified on the plan. And the rest of it will be just passive open space as the golf course is today. And we heard from the public how much people enjoy using it and sledding and being out there, and that's going to continue.
Yeah, I was leading, my concern was, would, if you wanted to actually build something in there, would that sort of like violate, if you will, what you're purporting to do for just phases 1 and 2? Because they are not in phases 1 and 2. That was all I was worried about.
Anyone else? Please.
Excuse me. Back to the conservation land. So at some point, it looks like the conservation land is to be controlled by the town and a land trust or another entity. And so when you folks are ready to take it off your hands, the town has first option. And then the Conservation Commission would be second option? Would they, if the town didn't want it, would the Conservation Commission?
Well, I don't think the Conservation Commission can hold land, but we would look for a conservation trust that would.
I meant the trust.
Yeah, and if they declined for some reason, the land is still deed restricted as conservation land, it would just be retained, the owner would retain it, but the the conservation restrictions would still apply regardless of who owns the property in the end.
This may seem silly, but why doesn't it just stay like that? Why doesn't it just stay the way it is in the plan? Why is the town purchasing it? Why would the town want to purchase it?
It came down to the contract zone.
The council asked us to include that in the contract zone. They just wanted to have the first right to refuse it.
Okay.
It actually wouldn't make sense for the town to acquire.
Please, please approach the mic, please, thank you.
It doesn't really make sense for the town to acquire it because with, the several miles of trails here, there'd be, I call it 1.5 miles of trails that would have to be maintained by the town, which would have to go through our trails. So that's a tax loss too for the town, right? So it's an expense that and then if we end up, plowing or doing whatever we do over the wintertime for the trails, we wouldn't be able to do the rest of the trails. So all the trails behind the Stroutwater. So that's just, in our eyes, it stays in our control as part of the master association, which is one of the big ones because, that's an excellent point too with the stormwater. Most of these homeowners don't have any idea about stormwater. They have no idea. And, we tend not to want to put it in their control because unfortunately for us, the stormwater that goes behind their house is also the stormwater for the retail and it's also the stormwater for the apartments. So as the master association, we would control all of that so that the homeowners don't have to deal with it, but we're also controlling all the trails and everything else so everything's done tandem and in sequence versus having to go talk to the town or somebody else about how their land's being maintained or not maintained, or maybe it's maintained better than ours. But yeah, there's stuff like that would be ideal to have it under one ownership group. So
Yeah, that made sense to me
Yeah.
as well. And just one other quick question on the houses. Again, are people buying homes there, or are they buying the lot and then they can build their own? Are you controlling, it sounded like you had the builders.
So our initial thought was to use it as liquidity to get the water sewer in, right? We've been open and transparent about that since day one. I think the quickest path with least resistance is to sell the lots, in clusters of 5 to 10 to a bunch of developers or to one developer for, if somebody was willing to buy all 75 or a chunk of, and let them go at their pace. I think in reality, there's, some likelihood that there's going to be some one-off houses in here and maybe foreseeable future, that's what ends up happening. I would like nothing more than to see every house have the same farmhouse feel. And if you just let a bunch of developers go wild, or if you sold 75 lots to 75 individuals that have to go hire their own builder, you would have 75 styles of houses in here or 50 styles of houses in here, and it would really look out of place. There's other developments around that have done that. It doesn't go badly, but it definitely doesn't have the same style, and you can tell it wasn't the same builder. So our goal is to try to have it as sequenced as possible and allow it to really appreciate with the opportunity of the multifamily and everything else, and have some sort of a hand in control of making sure it all comes together and fits together, and that the town isn't forced with, having issues with talking to 75 different single family buyers that don't want to have 3 building materials and then have it come back to the town, and the town has to give 75 different waivers for it just doesn't work like that. It'd be too much hassle in the town, and quite frankly, it'd be easier for us to do it differently. So we're trying to get it so that it's least impactful on both of us.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting at, was if people are just buying lots and then finding a builder versus having a builder do a section.
Correct.
And you folks are maintaining somewhat control over what you're looking for when you're speaking to the builder and how you want them to.
So one of the advantages that we have here too is there's a master association we talked about briefly. It has a real, it's got rules and regulations. It's got criteria. There's going to be certain rules of, just certain things that have to be hit. Building materials. There's, no rough woods. the posts, the mailboxes, the stations, everything, building color. There's certain stuff, that we're trying to keep it central and, somewhat middle line, so there's nothing too extravagant one way or the other.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would just echo
Please.
the landscape comments from the peer review and others on adding a little more diversity. I mean, based on the look and feel that you guys are going for, even if it's in the town ordinance, that those specific trees,
Could you grab that mic, please? Thank you. Stephen, could you please grab the mic?
more than just red maple.
Happy to do that.
Carl?
Yeah, I've got a follow-up question to the staff. Going back to the original conversation about traffic, if the traffic study showed a reduction from a D to an F, would that preclude us from approving the project? If it was a reduction from a C to a D, would that preclude us from?
I can't speak to the specific language, but it sounds, if it's, as Dan mentioned, if it specifically precludes from a D to an E or lower.
There's some following provisions that provide some waivers for that. And that whole section of the ordinance also is prefaced with, when a project generates 100 trips, these things apply. So it's actually silent on what the requirements are when you're under that 100 trip threshold. So it says you cannot do this without you can't do the reduction in level of service without making improvements unless the planning board releases a waiver and there's some criteria around that. Like an agency has to demonstrate that they're funding some other improvement. But the whole section of your ordinance applies to projects that hit the 100 trip threshold, and then go on to say that you can't take a D and make it a lower level of service.
And right now, this project is not going to hit the 100 trip threshold?
That's correct.
Is that right?
Yes, correct.
With this phase.
With the phase 1 and 2, it
Phases
does
one
not.
and two.
Phase 1 and 2.
Correct.
Phase 3 will.
So it would not trigger
That particular section.
that section?
It sounds like it. I have not read that
So
section.
that goes back to my earlier question. If this was going to decrease from a D to an E or an E to an F, would that require a waiver, or would we be allowed to approve the project without mitigation? And it sounds like, yes, we could, because it doesn't hit the 100 trips, but I'm seeing some reticence over here. We've gotten it, that's coming from the developer. So I'd like to hear it from the town definitively, one way or the other. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm not against this project. I mean, you have gone above and beyond, and I have supported this project throughout. But we also have an obligation, I feel, to the town, and as our duties as planning board members. This is not a future problem. We've identified that it's going to make traffic worse now. This isn't a future thing that we're worried about. It's a now thing, and so and I'm not as optimistic that the DOT is going to do their traffic plan quickly. And I mean, we've asked these questions before of Tom and others here in this chamber on other projects in other places about about DOT and their timeline for these studies, and haven't gotten much of a positive response. So anyway, I remain conflicted about what our role is and what our ordinance says. If nothing else, we've identified that there's a gap in our ordinances that needs to be addressed at this level F, and what happens at that point. So that's something that we need to write down and try to fix in the future if we do nothing else out of this session. But that's where I'm at still.
I think it's an important thought to make too. DOT's not great in the municipality standpoint, where they're a lot better in the private sector when they're getting paid, top dollar to get this stuff done, because we don't get the discounts that the municipalities get, and they're forced to kind of work at a more customer standpoint versus a municipality standpoint. That's one. I think the big thing though comes down to, as these improvements are made, the property and everything kind of are working towards the same goal, right? And I know, everybody that's been working on the project since day one, it's all been working towards the one thought process that, let's put it this way. This project for phase 1 and 2 does not require any of the studies that we've done. We did that as a request of the planning board to try to help the public get to this point. So we've gone above and beyond, as we talked about, and we're all for continuing to do that, but we've gone above and beyond to get that study done, even though it wasn't required, to then find out that it wasn't necessarily becoming worse. Doesn't make sense for us to spend more capital to then make it worse 6 months from now or.
Yeah, I get all that. I'm just responding to the comments that are in the packet that we have that recommended that these changes take place. And if the staff is saying that there was no traffic study required and that we should not be taking this into consideration, that's that's why I'm asking these questions, because the information is presented as if we should be taking these things into consideration, and now we're being told maybe we shouldn't be, and that's confusing to me, and I would imagine confusing to everybody else.
So we have two different ordinances we're dealing with. We're dealing with the subdivision ordinance, and we're dealing with the site plan review ordinance. The subdivision ordinance under preliminary plan, it has one statement: will not cause congestion or unsafe conditions with respect to the use of the highways or public roads existing or proposed on or off site. Period. End of sentence.
That's site plan.
That's subdivision, preliminary subdivision. The site plan, and that's on page 35, number 2. On page 42, B is the site plan review section, and that deals with access to the site. And we have it paraphrased here, and this is where I call them yeah, but clauses. So we've paraphrased it into one sentence, but there's more to it. So can you look for the site plan section, please? So we've paraphrased it to say, vehicular access to the site will be on roads which have adequate capacity to accommodate the additional traffic generated by the development. And then there's more to it, because this is, shortened up a little bit. So I'm having Damon look through to find the rest of the ordinance so we can read it.
I have it here.
Mr. Riley, do you have it? You might be able to guide him.
There's 2 paragraphs to it.
Yeah, so it's the second half of the paragraph Carol read. It goes on to say, so it starts with vehicular access to the site will be on roads which have adequate capacity to accommodate the additional traffic generated by the development. For developments which generate 100 or more peak hour trips based on the latest edition of the Trip Generation Manual of the Institute of Traffic Engineers, intersections on major access routes to the site within 1 mile of any entrance road, which are functioning at a level of service C or better prior to the development, will function at a minimum level of service C after the development. We don't have that condition. If any intersection is functioning at a level of service D or lower prior to the development, the project will not reduce the current level of service. So that is the situation where we're in. And in the term level of service relates to the ranking. It doesn't mean there's no delay or no impact. It just means it doesn't fall to the next category. At least that's how I read that. It goes on to say, in under 2, the planning board or site plan review committee may approve a development not meeting this requirement if the applicant demonstrates that A public agency has committed funds to construct the improvements necessary to bring the level of access to this standard, or the applicant will assume financial responsibility for the improvements necessary to bring the level of service to this standard and will guarantee completion of the improvements within 1 year of the project. And so, again, that second paragraph applies all of that to developments which generate 100 or more peak hour trips based on the ITE.
That's the key part. And we are not, this is not meeting the 100 trip hours in phase 1 and 2. So because it's not meeting the 100 trips in that phase, it makes me feel comfortable that we can move forward with this phase 1 and 2 and address, when we reach that 100 mark, 100 trips, address the traffic at that point, at which time Maine DOT will be stepping in and doing all the studies and helping to assess what's needed. Whereas at this point, we're not at that. We didn't reach the 100 trips.
And at least from our standpoint, as Nick said, that we would at least have the certainty that the DOT agrees with what we may be recommending for approval.
If you were stopping at phase 2 and you were going to build this facility up to phase 2 and leave us with F roads, that would be a different story. Then I would be saying, no, we can't do that. We have to work around that. But
We're only considering phase 1 and 2 today.
exactly.
We're not considering phase 3.
That's
So
right.
we can't consider improvements that are going to be made in phase 3 either
But-
because they're not under consideration today.
But they're not necessary in phase 1 and
But you
2.
just said we wouldn't grant it if we didn't know that phase 3 was on the way because we wouldn't make the situation worse.
Well, yes, that I do think, it does, but we do know that there's going to be another phase and that we know that the project
don't
is
know that.
going on it.
Just
don't?
be
Well,
mindful,
I
just be
assume
very
we
mindful.
do.
This isn't a typical project.
Right.
It's a contract zone. We have a
this-
contract we have to fulfill with the town. We have a contract. So it's not, this isn't an approved project that phase 1 and 2, it's a contract zone that has to be fulfilled. So that's the big one. So no, we don't have to come back and do those things on a normal project. You're absolutely correct. Where it's a contract zone, we do. We do have to come back. We have to give you guys retail. We have to do that. There's certain criteria, and that's gonna drive a lot of traffic. And that is gonna demand those traffic studies, just as it should beyond phase 3.
And I
So-
would rather do it knowing what the traffic is really going to be, do the study and address what needs to be addressed rather than guessing and, just waiting to see with it.
About an hour ago, I suggested that this is the bridge that we needn't try to cross now. Okay, all right, thank you for reinforcing my thought.
Well, I mean, if I want to kind of challenge you on one thing. Yes, you have a contract zone. I'm sure there's somewhere in there is some outs. If your economics did not allow you to progress beyond phase 2, there'd be some resolution.
Be mindful, right? And I'm just throwing this out there. Phase 1 and 2 are a loss.
Yeah,
Right?
no.
So let's just go a little further on that. The whole reason we wanted the contract zone, right? The whole reason we wanted the contract zone is in 4 years, it might be a different bunch of faces sitting up there, right? And it's just the reality. It could very well happen. It also could happen with council. What happens if we run $6 million worth of water sewer at today's value, right? And we're at a loss on phase 1 and 2, and then we come back to build everything that we promised we were going to build, but Gorham doesn't want housing anymore. That's why we put the contract zone in place. So the contract zone is stipulated that we have to fulfill all 10 phases in a reasonable amount of time. That timeline is 15 years. So just be mindful, we have a timeline on everything. There's no deadlines per phase, certainly isn't. There's obviously leeways, but there's no reason to believe that we're not going to come through and try to get this to its fullest extent. And hopefully it's quicker. Not too fast, but hopefully it's quicker.
Yeah, and thank you. I want to come back to just what we're saying over here, though. If, Bill, you're saying we only need or else are you saying we just want to concern ourselves with phase 1 and 2, but we already have given preliminary approval to further phases, so you can't ignore those phases happen. And honestly, the only, I've been on the fence on this one, and the only way I am rationalizing approving it is that if we don't approve this, the situation is going to get worse along there, not because of it, just because of everything else that's happening in the world, okay? There's going to be more cars along there, and that's nothing we can control. So when I look at this of how I would make a decision on this, I actually see this as trying, yes, it's temporarily could make it worse, but it also is on a path to make it better. Possibly. And at least, because if we say no, we don't approve it, it's only going to get worse. And I don't see anything else coming along in the near term that's going to make it any better.
Please, Mr. Frank.
Well said. I like, David, I like that you said it lays the groundwork for future improvements. Because if it's not done now, then, it's pay me now or pay me later. And we don't want to do it later. We want to lay the groundwork now.
Yeah. Good.
Well said.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen. Don't stop talking now.
Well, are we ready for a motion?
Well, let me look to the right. Any questions, concerns on the right? Okay, thank you. Yes, to my left, please. Mr. Frank?
Yeah, a couple of questions really for staff regarding our 50-some page missive here. Okay, I finally found it, I think. Nope, not yet. Okay. On page 38, there's a bunch of paragraphs, numbers and letters with stipulations, or conditions, conditions of approval. And there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then on page 51, there's another list of conditions of approval with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the things listed under the lowercase letters are not the same. I mean, some of them are, but some of them are not. Where did I make my little list?
Can I jump in?
Yes.
The reason for that is there are very specific conditions that go with subdivision, and there are very specific conditions that go with site plan. That's why they read differently.
Different ones. One site
Okay.
plan, one-
Yeah, because 30, there's even a slightly, there are different
Yeah.
things mentioned. And
So on the subdivision plan, they need to put all the conditions of approval that relate to the subdivision plan only. On the site plan, they have specific conditions
okay.
If I
that
may,
belong on that plan.
there are also conditions for private ways as well
Yes,
that are listed.
exactly.
Three motions tonight.
Thank you.
There are 3 motions.
Thank you.
And before we get to the motions, are there any amendments that have been made through all this discussion tonight?
Anyone?
I'll mention that we do have the standard condition that staff and peer review comments shall be addressed prior to the board signing the plans.
What page, please?
Oh, sorry, it's on, well, each of the conditions of approval have that option that you can hang your hat on for minor revisions. So on page 55, it's any staff and peer review comments shall be addressed prior to the board signing the plans. I think there's similar wording in the private way and subdivision
There is.
conditions of approval.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Want me to start? All right. We have, as I see it, there are three motions.
Yep.
Okay. Let's make sure we're on the same. 57, yes. So I move to grant Triana Properties LLC request for site plan approval of Phase 1 and 2 of Gorham Fairways located on map 7, lot 6, 7, and 8 on McClellan Drive in South Gorham Crossroads zoning district, based on findings of fact and conditions of approval as written by the town planner.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, additional edits?
I just think it probably should go on, really want it on the record that, the planning board spent an enormous amount of time on this issue, recognizing that there was that this project can and may likely make traffic temporarily worse, but it is hopefully leading to a long-term solution through the DOT studies on the future phases.
Thank you. I think we all share that lament. I mean, the cart's before the horse.
Yeah.
And then they're going to come back and tell us that there was a problem, but it appears that the developer has taken this into consideration and making some improvements now. Hopefully it will benefit them later. So we have a motion, Mr. Walsh, a second, Ms. Nichols. Any other comments, questions, suggestions? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Would you like to continue?
Yeah, I guess I can continue. So for final subdivision approval, move to grant Triana Properties LLC request for final subdivision approval for Phase 1 and 2 of Gorham Crossways located on map 7, lot 6, 7, and 8 on McClellan Drive in the South Gorham Crossroads zoning district based upon findings of fact and conditions of approval as written by the town planner.
And I will second that.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Once again, any other discussion, comments, questions, suggestions, ideas? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, Colonel.
And third motion is for private way approval. Move to grant Triana Properties LLC request for private way approvals on roads A and C of Gorham Fairways located on map 7, lot 6, 7, and 8 on McClellan Drive in South Gorham Crossroads zoning district based on findings of fact and conditions of approval as written by the town planner.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Is there a second?
I will second that one as well.
Thank you. We're on a roll. I have one question. I'm just curious how we go from A to C and not connect it.
Private work, yeah.
If I'm looking at my drawings correctly, Road B is connecting A and C. So C is this little satellite piece of property out in the middle of nowhere. Is that right?
Yeah, A and C are the two dead-end legs coming off of the road. I don't know why it appears to me that it should apply to all the roads in this phase, which would be A, B, C, and D are what are proposed in this aspect of the project. So I'm not sure why that.
So are you asking for A, B, C, and D? Just right. We want to make sure this is right before we leave.
Here's my thinking. When I made up this motion, that A and C are dead-end roads that the town most likely would never take over.
Okay, that makes sense.
The rest of the roads have half a chance of becoming public because they're all connected and there's multiple properties along them. So that's why I picked A and C as an option. We can come back to visit that later on if we need to.
That makes sense.
Fair assessment, but Road D is similar dead end.
But it's an extension of the main road all the way down.
Yeah.
I can see that, but it's a dead end regardless. It's, what difference,
Road A does the same thing.
A and C, both
They-
end? That's it. So, no, I'm just,
Mr. Chair, it has to do, well, the number of units served and the connection point is the difference.
That is true.
so there's a leg of D that I would say, without counting, is similar or equal to Road A. But we look at Road D as in totality?
Road D starts up here.
Yep.
In its totality, it would have most likely one road name, which I'm not sure of at the moment, but
It's okay.
there are multiple properties along it. That's one of the criteria that the council has in its policy on accepting roads, that they have multiple connections and that they are, they have multiple lots along them and/or dwelling units. So that was the thinking.
Okay.
We come back to that because, you know, that's, it's a completely different phase. Oh, no, I'm sorry, no, it isn't.
Yes, yes, please, Mr. Frank.
Possibly. On page 7, I had this highlighted, although I didn't feel it was worth bringing up. On page 7, the applicant has stated that it anticipates that the main loop road through the site may be offered for public acceptance. So maybe because of that, you don't want to consider it a private way. Maybe.
Yeah, I think the way it's written makes sense now. I understand where Carol was going from. I think we're comfortable with that. And if we had to come back and amend something to address the tail end of Road D, we could certainly do that.
You're okay with it?
I would argue if the staff is okay with it and the developer is okay with it, then we should be okay with it.
Makes sense.
There was a motion by Mr. Walsh, second by Mr. Nichols. Going once? Any objections, any other questions? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. I think we're okay.
I think there's one more, right? Site plan approval?
No, right away.
Subdivisions, private way and site plan.
That was 3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You falling asleep at the wheel.
Let's do one more. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time on this. It's been a long road, and a
Thank
long
you.
time. I
Appreciate
it.
your
Thank you.
efforts. Just understand our concerns, I'm sure. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 9:25. I'm asking your permission to take something out of order. I would like to take discussion of the sketch site plan review, item 3 discussion next. Mr. Norton's going to be here anyways to entertain us. I don't think he would mind. We can take a 5-minute break if you'd like. Anyone want to take a 5-minute break? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, 5-minute break? Please, let's resume at 9:30.
Okay.
9:30.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is January 1st, 2026. We're continuing the planning board meeting.
Sorry, it's June 1st?
What did I say?
Getting
Motion.
warmer, thank goodness.
Let's cut the tape and can we restart that, Ben? Or is it too late? Too late? All right. According to Colonel Benson, it is June 1st, 2026. I'm still in a time warp. It is Monday evening, Town of Gorham Planning Board meeting. This is a continuation. We are changing the order of business. We're going to item 3 for the sake of time. Item 3 is a discussion. Sketch site plan review, Perennial Gorham Solar, LLC, Martin Place Farm Solar. A request for a sketch plan review of a proposed to construct a 0.99 megawatt solar array on 10 acres of land within the westerly part of the Martin Place Farm on Fort Hill Road, Zone Rural R, Map 61, Lot 7, Map 64, Lot 15, and Map 43, Lot 26. The applicant is represented by Lucian Langlois, PE with BH2M. Andy, okay, excuse me, thank you. Gentlemen, good evening. Would you please introduce the project?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So, as I said, this is a proposal to create a 0.99 megawatt solar facility on approximately 10 acres of land within a 137.5 acre property. It would be accessed by an approximately 1,700 foot long access drive from Fort Hill Road. It would include one stream crossing of a tributary of the Little River. Floodplain of the Little River is located on the northern portion of the site. The proposed land use is consistent with the zoning and comprehensive plan provisions. There's some natural resource conservation concerns that need to be addressed with stream crossing and potential impacts to the Little River. Some staff comments we suggest the board discuss with the applicant. First of all, the board may want to consider scheduling a site walk for this project. As far as the access drive, the applicants will need to show what upgrades are needed to the existing farm road that they're proposing to build the access drive along to allow for maintenance activities and emergency vehicle access. They will have to demonstrate that they have an access easement to use the proposed access drive and that it'll have appropriate access for fire through a Knox box if there's a gate installed, and that should be shown on the plans. There'll have to be a discussion about addressing to determine if the access drive will need a name or if it will have a Fort Hill Road address. That's something that applicants will need to discuss with staff. As far as utility connections, the applicant's proposing a blend of overhead and underground utilities. The ordinances do require underground utilities with a provision for large-scale energy consumers. As noted here in the memo, the board should discuss whether such a waiver may be warranted in this case, or whether the board like to require the applicant to have underground utilities in this case. Site distances should be added at the access curb cut on Fort Hill Road. And we would suggest a rendering should be provided showing the appearance of the project from vantage points along Fort Hill Road to determine if any buffering and or screening should be added. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Eckloff. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Nick Lacasse. Thank you. I appreciate the change around in scheduling tonight to allow us to speak to you. I'm a partner at Perennial Renewables. I grew up in Augusta, Maine. Perennial is a Maine-based company. We've done about 10 of these 1 megawatt solar sites since we founded our business in 2021. This is our first solar site south of Gardner, Augusta area. So most of our work has been in the central part of the state. Having met the Martin family through a broker, it's been really good to get to know them and familiarize ourselves with Gorham and this part of town. It's a really, pretty area. What we look for in solar sites is all about visual impact. So solar is very, it's land hungry, and it's also, there's significant visual impact because it's more industrial looking. It's metal and glass. So I'm just up here to, introduce Perennial and myself, hand it over to Lucian and Andy and really talk specifics. But I did just want to talk about the visual impact because you mentioned it at the end there, Damon. So if you look at the site plan that's in front of you, the page that has topography, it's the more close up into the site, you'll see that the entire solar project is sitting into a lower bowl. This project is about 15 feet below a hill on the eastern side of it. So we're looking at 150 feet topography below, above sea level, where the project site is, and 175 feet above sea level on this eastern hill between the solar site and Fort Hill Road. So we really like this spot from a visual perspective because the natural topography, this 15-foot hill, blocks all of our solar panels. There's a lot more to address, and we're happy to begin the process now, but just to talk about that, Perennial really likes buffered sites, and this is a really good one with the natural topography. So nice to meet all of you. I'll hand it over to Lucian now to talk a little bit more about the project, but looking forward to discussing more and answering any concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. So my name is Lucian Langlois with BH2M, and I'm the Environmental Department Manager at BH2M. So Nick and I have worked on these projects for a few years, as he's mentioned, and he's a great client to work with because he chooses these sites very particularly. So this location here, shielded from the natural topography, it's a great location for solar. As far as natural resources, we only have one major constraint, and that's the stream that lies between the point A and point B to our project. Right now, there's an existing farm road that comes off of Fort Hill Road. There's a loop road that serves the farm. We're looking at the southern entrance to utilize. So we'd follow the footprint of that existing farm road, following it right to the site. We are anticipating a few overhead poles at the interconnection along Fort Hill Road, but Perennial has expressed their interest in making sure that the majority of the remaining utilities stay underground in compliance with the ordinance. If that's not the case, or there's some constraints where we do have to go overhead, we do anticipate a waiver for that section. Besides that, this is like I said, a great site. Damon gave a good summary of the site, and so did Nick, so I'm not gonna go over too much of that, but this site doesn't really have a lot of burden, I guess, on the town infrastructure. There's no, water or sewer involved for this. As far as traffic, there's quarterly visits that are expected to maintain the solar field, but this isn't a big traffic generating site. As far as other regulatory agencies, we'd expect Army Corps permitting, potentially with the crossing. There could be DEP permitting with the crossing. Besides that, this is a very low impact style development where there's minimal grading, there's minimal impervious area constructed, there's no official stormwater treatment BMPs as part of this. It's really just a conversion of meadowland to improved meadow with a solar array over it. And with the main DEP decommissioning requirements, we will have to have a bond posted with the state too for the decommissioning of the project. Right now, there's a lease agreement with Perennial for this project area. It spans 3 parcels. So we'll be seeking an easement and the lease agreement that will cover those 3 parcels. And that's kind of that's the summary of it. I'm happy to take some questions, but we're very thankful for Carol, Damon, and Chuck for their meeting prior to this to get some good feedback. We've already started working on some of those, in particularly just making sure that we have a safe and reliable access road. We've received those comments, so we're looking into that now, but
besides that, I'd open it up to you guys.
Thank you. Members of the board. Please, Mr. Frank.
I'll be referring to our staff notes here. I don't know
Sure.
if you get copies of that.
Yep.
But on the overview, you talk about the access drive, about a third of a mile. And in the language here, it says the proposed access drive. But then on page 4, the access drive, it says it's proposed along an existing farm road. So is the farm road existing or is it proposed?
The farm road is existing, and
That's kind of what I thought.
we're proposing to use that same road, but we will need to improve and widen that road.
Okay, so the proposing part has to do with the change of use of it, if you will, maybe.
It'd be better stated that they're proposed improvements to an existing farm road.
Okay. And again, going back to page 2, you have I'm sorry, yeah, it's further down. You talk about a upgrade to a stream crossing. Could you describe the nature of the existing stream crossing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and I think a site visit would be very beneficial for this type of project, so we
made
can
a
see
note
these
about,
things.
yeah, the site walk.
But it's an old crossing. It serves the use right now to where you can get a tractor over it, you can get a vehicle over it, but it's not really a typical culvert. It looks like it's a thin piece of metal that has some vertical other metal that's helping to hold it up. It's a little bit corroded. It's probably, I think it's about 4 feet wide. So it's undersized for the crossing, for what you would do for a nice stream smart crossing today. For a new crossing, it's undersized.
So for your proposed new purpose then, what type of vehicle, what's the most strenuous vehicle that you would have to use to cross this thing?
Yeah, we understand that we need a wheel. I think a 40-foot wide is like the turning radius for a typical emergency vehicle, but we'll make sure that we work with town staff to have that. But we haven't finalized a exact crossing structure, whether it's a full span like a bridge, whether it's a box culvert or an arch or some kind of crossing, but it will be an improvement from what's there now.
Okay, yeah, I didn't ask my question properly. I guess what I really was after was, what's the heaviest weight vehicle that you expect to have cross this new bridge? A fire truck.
Yeah, that's the
Yep.
emergency vehicle, yep.
Yeah, dump trucks, fire trucks, okay. Let me see, I think I had,
90 ton typically is what you're trying to do.
that's big. Oh, yeah, on page 4, again, our staff notes, it says the building, in parentheses, if there is one, the standards for the building. So there will be a structure, a building?
There will be no structures, no.
Oh, okay, then I won't have to ask the rest of my question, because the rest of my question was, is there going to be any humans in this building? Okay. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Nicely done, staff. Quick read.
Please, Ms. Walsh.
Okay. Well, number one, thank you for your patience tonight. It was a long first item that you sat through. So, I'm looking at Google Street View out across there. I mean, I live nearby, and, you drive up there, it is a nice view across the backfield. So I think you were saying there's kind of a natural gully back there, over a little rise. Yeah. Okay, so that's where it will be. The pole, describe in a little more detail. You got 1,700 feet back from the road. Are you going to go overhead poles and lines back to the field from Fort Hill Road?
Sure.
So Central Maine Power requires a couple of poles to be overhead. Their interconnection equipment
Right.
to break and meter at this size voltage, they don't make a pad-mounted version of it.
So
Or at
if-
least they do, they just don't approve pad-mounted versions.
If
They
you,
won't install
if
it.
you go further up Fort Hill Road, you have another solar field off on the left.
Yep,
If you're going north. You have a series of, 4 poles there with the air switches?
yep,
All right.
bingo.
And we're going to have that out at Fort Hill Road
Yep.
at this one?
So this will be a little bit different because the Martins are concerned about the pole, the view of them as well. So what this will be is 2 poles overhead, underground through the farmyard itself. So that 4-pole span with breakering equipment isn't right out by the road. We're going to go underground. CMP approved this already. We had our field planner appointment. Underground after 2 poles. We need the reason we have 2 by the road is a transformer for the Martin house and farmyard, then a riser to go underground. 200 feet back, 250 feet back. Once the road starts to go down towards this gully that Lucian was just talking about, we're going to go overhead again for 3 pole spans.
Okay.
Then we're going to go back underground the rest of the way. So I think originally we had discussed going all 1,700 feet overhead. Would be a little bit less expensive to do that, but it's in your ordinance to try and have everything buried underground, and we're looking for resilient infrastructure too, so we're good with that.
What you just described, you've addressed one of my primary concerns is that array of 4 poles out by the road.
Yep.
So
It's hard to get away from with Central Maine Powers, they can be a little rigid.
now, I understand what they are.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was the only questions I had. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, sorry. I never do. If you were looking at that solar field that's further up Fort Hill Road, how will this, in terms of number of panels, how does that compare?
That's, don't quote me exactly, because I'm not exactly positive. Like number to number, but that's a 5 megawatt site and this is a 1 megawatt
Oh,
site.
that's a 5 megawatt site. Oh,
So it's between 4 and 5 based
Okay.
on memory only.
Yeah.
So we're about a fifth the size of that.
Yeah,
This is
that's
24.
significantly larger.
Yeah, significantly larger.
all right, thank you.
Please, Ms. Nichols.
Okay, so I have a few questions. One, I am very happy to hear that you are trying to make these less conspicuous. I understand you're from the Augusta area, and that whole distraught thing getting on and off the highway is just absolutely horrendous. So that one of my biggest things was to make sure it was buffered. So this is even better, the way it's going. But some of my questions are, what is the lifespan of your panels? Like, how long is that going to be out there before they have to be, and how does that happen?
Yeah, so if you're buying solar modules from a tier 1 solar manufacturer these days, you're getting a 25-year performance warranty up to 80% of nameplate power on the module. So if I buy a 1,000-watt solar panel, they are Hanwha, it's the name of one of our biggest suppliers. They're South Korean. Hanwha is repping 800 watts of usage through 25 years. So that's just the warranty itself is good for that. Our pro formas are up to 35 years. So we get 35-year pro forma on a project like this.
Nice.
What's gone on in Augusta has actually been it's a case study in what not to do with systems like this. And there are different things going on there with DOT, building in places that they don't need approval, right? Those clover fields are not, you guys will know well, there's no town jurisdiction there, there's no city jurisdiction. There's a history lesson in it
Down the
too,
trees
so yeah.
The other thing is not cutting down trees to put up solar panels. That's a pet peeve of mine, so I'm glad to see that you're not doing that. But I do have a question about potentially using the meadow still for for animals grazing. Because I read something somewhere about how that was a good way of managing, keeping the grasses down, that they had sheep in there. Is that something that you've looked into at all? Does that make
Yeah, so
reality
there's a
sense?
name for it too. It's called agrovoltaics. They're actually doing it at the project right up the road. It's still on the Martins property. So there are sheep that are grazing in there right now. If they're right up the road, it's definitely something we're interested in doing. There could be a business case for it as well. Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, it would be nice to see more of that. Let me see what else. Oh, all right. I had some of the same questions that have already been answered in regard to the farm road, whether that was an existing farm road, because it appears to be going through a little piece of wetlands. But it's existing, so you're just going to be upgrading that, and I imagine that part going through the wetlands is probably going to be better because that's where you're going to be putting your bridge.
Lucian called it an improvement. So yes, it could be a bridge, a box culvert, a new culvert.
Oh, I remember what the other question was. I'm sorry. You said that at the beginning of, on Fort Hill Road, you're going to put up 2 poles. Then you're going to go a ways and put up 3, I think you said. Why those other 3? It sounded like there was a definite purpose for what you were proposing.
Required protection equipment for the solar project. So if you go into your house and you look at your panel board where your power comes in, see all your breakers? This is the same thing. It's just really big, so you got to put it on a pole. It has to be on a pole.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone? Looking to my right, we're all set? Good to go. This was a discussion. Anything else?
Andy?
Just one thing.
Please.
Would the board like to schedule the site walk? If
I'm sorry,
somebody
I'm
could
sorry,
reach
thank you,
out
thank you for that,
and
yes.
Do that?
Before the winter?
Yes.
Still waiting for summer.
Yeah.
We could send a poll out to the applicants and the board to try to identify a time. Do you have a general guidance on when, in general, you'd like to do this?
My question is it walkable? Is this
Yeah,
going to be?
walkable, very well. Drivable, actually.
Tick-infested mess of 1,700 feet?
Probably right now, yes. I got one on the side of the highway. But, yeah, it's
Stay in the
bad.
center of the road.
I'm sorry?
Stay in the center of the road.
Yeah, okay. You'll send out a survey?
Yes, I can do that. Perhaps we'll look to late June or maybe towards early July.
Sure, that's right.
Have some time to notice it and
Sure.
make a plan.
Yep. Throw out
Oh,
a few
there are
dates.
summer vacations, so we'll work our best to.
Yeah, late
find the
June's
time.
great, the school's out.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All righty.
Yeah, we'll reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're taking things out of order. This is now item 2, because it's going to be our own internal conversation. I feel bad. I'm guessing Mrs. Roby was here maybe to talk about or look at this previous project, but
I touched base with Susan.
she
She gave me a comment. I answered it for her, but I'll reiterate it for the board when you're on.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't think it was fair for us to, we're gonna grill you for the next hour and a half. I didn't think it was fair to make this other group wait. All righty, this public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. Site plan amendment, Town of Gorham Village School Access Drive. A request for review of a proposal to construct a 577-foot access drive at the village school on Roby Street to connect the front and rear of the parcel and provide improvements to parking at the ball fields. Zoned urban residential, map 26, lot 17. The applicant is represented by Charles Norton, PE, with the town of Gorham. Would someone like to introduce this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So as you noted, this is a town project. So the connection, the access drive connection would be a 16-foot wide drive with a 5.5-foot sidewalk connecting the front and portion of Village Elementary with the parking lot in the rear, abutting White Birch Lane. The scope would also include adding pedestrian lighting and paving the existing gravel lot and installing stormwater infrastructure as well. It's funded through voter referendum that was originally passed in November 2024, amended in 2025. The goal of the project, well, there's several goals, one of them being to allow for safer access to the school. It would allow the school to set up 2 separate loops for drop-off, 1 loop for bus drop-off, a separate loop for other vehicles, parents, guardian drop-off. The connection point would also allow for better access to the ball fields during events. There's a plan to install no parking signs and not allow parking along the access drive for safety reasons. There are some changes that have been identified. We've sent this to Wright Pierce for peer review. So there's some items noted in their memo that need to be addressed, including needs to be stamped by a licensed engineer. Question for the board that came out of that review and from planning, as well as whether a photometric plan is required to establish that adequate lighting is provided, or if that's adequately demonstrated by plan sheets 8, 9, and 10. And there's some other relatively, I would say, minor engineering comments relating to grading and stormwater designs that need to be addressed, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to take questions after public comment and presentation from the town engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Yakovlev. Good evening.
Evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Chuck Norton, town engineer, representing the town of Gorham here.
I'm sorry, I don't mean, I apologize for interrupting. It's about 3 minutes to 10. We are going to be going past 10. Is everyone okay with that? Just verbally nod your head? Okay. Thank you. I apologize. Thank you.
No problem. I'll keep it brief. Damon laid out the project really nicely. Just for a little bit of background, the inception of this project comes from a project that the school was originally pursuing to expand parking at the village school. The school department and the town met a couple of different times, and based on the costs associated and some of the construction challenges with adding a bunch of parking into the village school itself, we decided to leverage some benefit we were getting out of the Roby Heights subdivision. We were receiving some funds to pave the lower lot. So we wanted to leverage that and decided that we took a look at the western portion of the fields and felt that we could fit in an access drive. Now, one thing I do want to point out about this is it's not a 22-foot wide bi-directional high-speed roadway. This is truly an access drive to connect two internal parking areas. So you have the parking area at the village school, and then you have the parking area down by the ball fields. The parking area down by the ball fields, we show it in the plan because we're working with our consultant engineer to assist us with doing some additional drainage and show paving and striping on that lot. That lot by the ball fields is currently considered impervious. It's a gravel lot. It's been used as a snow dump for probably 20 or 30 years. Paving that lot is a maintenance function, not necessarily contributing to additional impervious areas. So we show it in the plan, so I just wanted to make sure that that was abundantly clear. Paving, striping, and any improvements down there are considered a maintenance function, not necessarily new construction. We did reach out to the DEP just to make sure that they were okay with not going through any additional permitting process through the DEP. They got back to us. I have that letter in writing. But because we're under the thresholds and the majority of repaving that lot is maintenance, they were okay with moving forward without any additional amendments on their end. So. Not much more to it. We are adding sidewalk, a little bit of lighting, some reconfiguration of the curbing up at Village School right there at the beginning of this drive. But other than that, open to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. This is a public hearing, so I'm going to jump ahead if you don't mind. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. If there was anyone that would like to speak in favor of this project, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. I see no one rising. Ladies and gentlemen, if there was anyone who would like to speak against this project, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. Again, I see no one rising. And ladies and gentlemen, if there was anyone here that would like to speak about this project, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Tim Profano, 43 New Portland Road. The only big concern that I have, and it may not even be a concern, is paving that parking lot. All the water's going to run into Railroad Brook. And the only thing I have with that is what is it going to do to increase the temperature and kill all the trout that are in the brook? And that's really, other than that, my only concern is that road, I'm assuming, is just for bus traffic. I don't know how much more cut-through traffic is going to be, but there's a ton of brook, there's a lot of brook trout in that brook, and it's always been gravel, and now paving it, you're increasing the temperature, to me, extremely high, because it's a lot of surface temperature, and all that's going to run off into that, and potentially kill all the trout. So that's my only, big concern, which runs all the way down New Portland Road, where it goes all the way down to Moody's, and then continues down through there. So,
Yes, thank you for your time. Thank you. Anyone else? See no one else rising. I'll close the public hearing.
I'd like to add a comment that I got from Susan Roby before I left. Sorry if I may.
Please.
She did mention the concern on the lights and having them on 24/7 or at least all night long. So I did discuss with her that I think it's appropriate to have a conversation with the Public Works Director about making those lights have a internal timer to them.
Thank you. Thank you to Mrs. Roby for conveying that message. Colonel?
No, I was just making sure that he got the.
Oh, okay. Sure thing. Thank you.
I can address the stormwater comment as well if everybody is okay with that. We do plan on capturing 100% and diverting it to the Roby Heights subdivision. Yep. Yep. No, I appreciate the comment. The Roby Heights subdivision has stormwater infrastructure that runs down White Birch Lane, and we're showing tying into those basins on White Birch Lane.
Okay, and point of order, Mr. Chairman, did you close the public hearing?
Yes.
I thought I did.
I thought he did.
Oh, did he? Okay, I missed it. All right.
Were you sleeping? Did you fall asleep?
Yeah.
Mr. Frank, give him a nudge, please. I
What?
thought I did.
Okay.
He's unnudgeable.
All right.
I looked at Ben to see if I closed it.
All right, no.
Thank
well, you have now. May I ask a question?
Please.
All right. Chuck, just, so you described as an access drive, how wide? What did you say?
16 feet.
Oh, 16 feet.
Yeah.
Is it going to be anything for like a speed hump or anything on there?
No, we talked a little bit about traffic mitigation control. So again, the parking area we show is paved. We have some thoughts about, from an internal perspective, about making sure that there's not a convenient way for somebody to turn from White Birch and move up this drive. The proposed entrance into into the lower parking lot has been shifted by the Roby Heights subdivision. You'd come in right off the end of White Birch into this parking area. Now you have to come down and then turn 90 into it. And so one of the internal conversations we've had is putting in some raised grassy medians to break it up. So
Okay.
if there's nobody in the parking lot, we just don't want a, cut across all the parking
Yeah.
spaces direct line. So we've talked about that as well.
You've had all those conversations. Great. All right, that's all I got.
So is this one way?
Or
is it gonna be signed?
It's not necessarily, there's not gonna be a stripe down the middle of it. The school may dictate that they wanna do one-way traffic during certain events or anything like that. Again, not a named road, merely an access drive.
I'm just wondering if two cars are trying to go
Two,
down.
two cars could pass on 16 feet, but again, we try to make it uncomfortable for them to do so.
One other question on the future sidewalk in front. Is there a reason that's not going in now?
So.
Is it to stay under the threshold or is it?
No, because it's all that's considered impervious right now. All of that area is gravel. We showed as that just for funding reasons. We likely will do something there, but we're not sure whether or not we want to have an actual raised sidewalk by the ball fields there, or if that's merely going to be maybe a striped pathway for people who are traversing the ball fields.
I assume a snowplow can get through 16 feet.
Yes, yeah. Whether or not it's maintained during the winter is also, we likely will for the school department, but that's going to be a conversation between school and town, correct?
My only other comment is the 23 feet between the aisles. But typically it's standard 24.
Oh, you mean between the drive aisles, the access aisles?
Not so much a concern on the backside where you're backing into grass, but that extra foot and with all the trucks on the road, you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
Just a thought.
we were trying to, as closely as we could, live within the same footprint that is surveyed as impervious area. So that might change a little bit as well. And when we add in any islands or landscaping, that might also change a bit.
Mr. Norton?
Yes, sir.
Please, thank you. It seems to be a very, very compressed area for parking. It's very, very tight on the boundaries on either side, access in and out. There's no criticism, I'm just saying visually, I see this as being very, very difficult to meander in and out. And maybe that's the idea. Generations of my sons playing in this area and all that other stuff, and now we're going to be asphalting this. It just looks really, really tight to me.
It's a little bit of intent behind that. I will say that I do believe the way that the contractor is showing the striping will likely change. Again, we showed this on this plan more for the town side of things. The real meat of the site plan is that access road. That's what the amendment's for. But certainly, when we go to actually stripe this, it may change.
Thank you. And I did see where Chief had no comment. And I also want to comment and thank planning, because now I see that each of the different disciplines have reviewed these, and thank you for having them say reviewed. At least we know that they have seen it, and I appreciate that. I'm just going to say it looks really, really tight to me. But I don't have any reason to go there, I don't think. So
Maybe we could build a turn-off lane for you or something.
I just remember going in and out of there, and it's tight on the gravel, never mind. And this is going to be striped, and we're going to be expecting people.
Eventually that parking area will be striped, yes.
Different school budget.
We typically stripe with town forces, so it'll be subject to Terry's availability and
Okay.
funding.
I'm good. Thank you.
I have a question. Mr. Chair, may I ask my question?
Fire away.
On page 2, Under the general notes, this third bullet states that there are 8 pedestrian scale light poles, and then everything's underground. I don't know, what is a pedestrian scale light pole? Is that not a
Yep,
light
no,
pole, those tall ones?
Correct, yeah. So specifically, pedestrian scale lighting is meant for pedestrian facilities, sidewalks, not necessarily illuminating your roadway network. So if you go out that way to South Street, those black poles that have the gooseneck on them, it's the same exact pole style.
Okay.
We're moving that for a town standard for our pedestrian lighting, is all those
Okay, but all
black
the
goosenecks.
electrical will be underground?
Correct, all
just
the
those
electric
poles.
is underground.
That's kind of what you're talking about. Kind of, sort of.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone going once, going twice? On page 17, we have a couple of motions, please. Please, Colonel.
I'd like to make a motion. I move to grant the town of Gorham's request for site plan approval for construction of a 577-foot access drive, sidewalk, and associated infrastructure at Village Elementary School located on Roby Street, map 26, lot 17, in the urban residential zoning district, based on findings of fact and conditions of approval as written by the town planner. I don't believe we have any amendments.
Thank you, Colonel. Is there a second?
Dave Walsh, second.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. My only comment, do we want to narrow this down and say it is 577 feet, or do we want to say plus or minus? And it's just curious.
I mean, as designed, it's a 577-foot road.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. All righty, so we have a motion and a second, please.
Mr. Walsh, second.
Yes, I'm sorry. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, wrapping things up, I will be missing the July meeting. I had made plans back in January. I will not be in town. I will be far away. I will not be here.
I will not be here as well.
Oh.
Same here.
And did I hear someone else? There's 3. We need at least 4 for a July meeting.
Hopefully, I'm going to be here.
You'll be running the show?
I'm planning on being here.
Mr. Frank, you're good?
I'll be in
July?
town. I'm good. I'll be here.
All righty. Thank you, Ben. Thank you to my right, to my left. Any other discussions, anything else to come before us? Any other news?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
Any other questions, discussions? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you.